3 minutes late to showtime, and I think that it's really exciting to have all of you here. And I am reminding myself that I need to talk a little more slowly because we have ASL interpretation as well as CART, and we're very fortunate too to have MAPA translators here to be able to translate from English to Spanish. So hopefully we're trying to do our best, and we need to even do better to accommodate everyone. So welcome to our Alcohol and Other Drug Awareness Town Hall meeting. And this is from MOAR, Massachusetts Organization for Addiction Recovery. We are organizing people in recovery, families and friends into a collective voice to educate the public about the value of living in recovery. Is that a good idea? Well, I hope you think so. So glad to have all of you here. And, you know, we're very, very excited. And I am hoping, is Father Joe White here? Do we have Father Joe White?
Marianne, before we go on, can you give me an opportunity to let our Spanish-speaking folks know what to do if they want to hear this in Spanish?
You know what? That's a fantastic idea, Noel. I wish I thought of that.
Bienvenidos, damas y caballeros. Queremos darle la gracia de estar aquí esta tarde. Si quieren escuchar el programa en español, hay un globo que dice interpretación abajo. Y si usted toca el botón de interpretación, puedes escuchar a Didier, a Valencia y también a Luz, que van a tomar la oportunidad de hablarle y explicarles todo lo que se va a platicar en esta tarde. Y con eso se los dejo para atrás con Marianne. Go ahead, take it away, Marianne.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. So this is really good. We're going to begin with some spirituality. We're going to go forward and we're going to learn more about the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services, what's new and what's up. Senator John Keenan will be here and he's going to demonstrate how important it is to use your faces and voices to educate our policymakers. We're going to learn all about the Massachusetts Substance Use Helpline. We're also going to learn a little bit about gambling. And most importantly, too, we're going to see a video today, as well as the participants, all from the Let's Give It Up Foundation. And how about prevention? And did you know there's something out there called, I believe it is called Cocktails to Go? Can you imagine that? Well, we'll talk a little bit about Cocktails to Go. And we will also be hearing, speaking of ASL, we will be seeing Karen Lawson as she shares about the issues that are there for the deaf and hard of hearing community. And we got some very good news that's coming out of the State House, and that is about new services that could come along. And our help is needed to educate our policymakers about that. And Step Rocks wants you to hear from George Halfpenny. And then what about safe consumption sites? What do you think about that? And we will learn exactly what those are. And we're so happy that Amanda Consigli from the Overdose Prevention Strategist is going to be here. She has a lot of different roles, but she gives fantastic updates about data and makes them really, really, really interesting. She puts them to life, which is very important to us. And then Spectrum Health Service has a brand new program that they want us to know about. So let's begin. And do we have Father Joe White with us tonight? Do we hear Father Joe?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, then let's just move it along. Let's get some spiritual guidance from Pastor Rivera, if he would come forward. He is going to speak in Spanish, and Alfredo Gonzalez from Casa Esperanza, who is the Associate Director of Recovery Support Services, and Pastor Rivera is also helping out in that regards. So take it away, Pastor Rivera.
Yes, thank you, Marianne.
Did I say pastor? I should have said pastor. Very good.
That's okay. It's fine. Voy a hablar acerca de fe y recuperación.
Hello, we're going to be speaking about faith and recovery.
Enfatizando tres conceptos:
We're going to be emphasizing three concepts:
creer, comprometerse y pasión.
belief, commit, and passion.
Hay un sinnúmero de elementos que influencian nuestra toma de decisiones en la vida. Factores que de una y otra forma han condicionado y creado una mentalidad. Esta mentalidad ha determinado y por consiguiente opera como algo automático en nosotros. Este proceder automático ha desarrollado un estilo de vida que en muchas ocasiones parece que no pudiéramos cambiar o deshacernos de él.
There are a number of elements that influence our decision-making in life. Factors that in one way or another have conditioned and created a mentality. This mentality has determined and therefore operates as something automatic in us. This automatic procedure has developed a lifestyle that on many occasions it seems that we could not change or get rid of.
Hoy quiero mencionar tres de estos factores: lo que creemos, nuestro compromiso con lo que creemos y nuestra pasión con nuestro compromiso, identificando aquello que debe ser entendido para entonces asimilarlo y hacerlo parte de nuestra creencia. Funcionará como vehículo para facilitar lo que creemos. No es suficiente decirnos a nosotros mismos, esto es lo que creemos, si nunca hemos realizado o admitido nuestra falta de comprensión y entendimiento en relación a lo que debemos creer. En el proceso de entender los conceptos de fe y recuperación, existe el reto de aceptar dónde estoy en el momento actual y dónde quisiera llegar. Para poder desarrollar la habilidad de poder comenzar el camino de recuperación, debo creer que el lugar donde me encuentro es un lugar temporero. Nuestra mentalidad comienza a dar los primeros pasos hacia una recuperación que nunca será instantánea, pero sí concreta. Concreta porque los pasos serán dirigidos de manera que con un propósito y plan, creyendo que el poder supremo o Dios cree en mí y yo como individuo acepto y creo. De esta manera, estoy tomando decisiones basadas en que soy una persona afortunada y que tengo el derecho para comenzar a cambiar mi estilo de vida.
Today, I want to mention three of these factors that we believe: our commitment to what we believe and our passion to our commitment. Identifying what must be understood in order to then assimilate it and make it part of our belief will work as a vehicle to facilitate what we believe. It is not enough to tell ourselves this is what we believe if we have never realized or admitted our lack of understanding in relations to what we should believe. In the process of understanding the concepts of faith and recovery, there is the challenge of accepting where I am the moment to act and where I would like to go. In order to develop the ability to begin the path of recovery, I must believe that the place where I am is a temporary place. Our mentality begins to take the first step towards a recovery, which will never be instantaneous, but concrete. Concrete because the steps will be directed in such a way that with a purpose and a plan, believing that the supreme power or God believes in me, and I as an individual accept and believe. In this way, I am making decisions based on the fact that I am a lucky person and I have the right to start changing my lifestyle.
Ahora bien, reconociendo el papel crucial de creer y el creer de forma activa, requiere que actuemos para concretizar de manera alcanzable nuestra creencia. El acto de compromiso refleja el grado de creencia en lo que voy a efectuar para mantener la consistencia en lo que realmente necesito. Hacer parte de una manera realista, poder dar los primeros pasos de transición de un estilo de vida temporero que quizás ha marcado mi vida por muchos años, pero es algo que con empeño hemos rezado que si yo creo, voy a demostrarme, me voy a comprometer a darle vida a mi creencia de que puedo salir de este momento para entonces mi vida sea definida, no por donde estoy, sino por donde estaré, y que ya he comenzado a establecer un estilo de vida diferente y sostenible.
Now, recognizing the crucial role of belief and active belief requires that we act to attainably concentrize our belief. The act of commitment reflects the degree of belief in what I am going to do to maintain consistency in what I really need to do. In order to realistically be able to take the first steps of transitioning from a temporary lifestyle that has perhaps marked my life for a long time, it is now that with determination, we have realized that if I believe, I will prove myself by committing myself to giving life to my belief that I can get out of this moment so that my life is defined not by where I am, but where I will be. Already that I have begun to establish a different and sustainable lifestyle.
Habiendo comenzado a dar los primeros pasos, creyendo que la energía o poder supremo de Dios me ayudarán en el proceso de comprometerme a mejorar. Un mejorar que no requiere correr, sino caminar juiciosamente hacia una meta que ya no está fuera de mi alcance. Descubriendo en el camino que teniendo el creer como el compromiso, entonces mi pasión nacerá no de un sueño, pero sí de una vida confrontada con un pasado decidido a cambiar. Esta vez el deseo de cambiar despertará en mí un sentimiento llamado pasión. La pasión será el elemento que contribuirá por el resto de nuestras vidas a empujarnos la milla extra por nosotros y por otros que están y estarán donde estuvimos. Hoy muchos de nosotros que trabajamos, porque independientemente de donde estuvimos, podemos mirar al pasado y decir, yo creí, yo me comprometí, desarrollé mi propia pasión y ahora es mi estilo de vida ayudar a otros a creer, a comprometerse y vivir una vida apasionada por ellos y por otros.
Having begun to take the first steps, believing that the energy of our supreme power or God will help me in the process of committing myself to improve, an improvement that does not require running, but walking judiciously towards a goal that is no longer out of reach. Discovering along the way that having belief as commitment, then my passion will be born not from a dream, but from a life confronted with a past determined to change. This time, the desire to change will awaken in me a feeling called passion. Passion will be the element that will contribute for the rest of our lives to push us the extra mile for ourselves and for others who are and will be where we were. Today, many of us work because regardless of where we have been, we can look back and say, I believed, I committed, I developed my own passion, and now it is my lifestyle to help others believe, commit, and live a life passionate about them and for others.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. I feel, yes, I feel highly spiritually vibrated in a very beautiful way. That was lovely, Pastor Rivera. And thank you, Alfredo, for doing the interpretation so we all could understand. And that's the importance of all of us being able to communicate. And speaking in a spiritual vein, I want to thank our funders, beginning with the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services through the Department of Public Health, which funds us to do the statewide capacity building in a very, very big way. The Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation, RISE, the Attorney General's Office. We are able to do what we do because of the funding. And then all of our membership across the state. I see people here from the Boston area. Hello, hello, hello. And then from Western Massachusetts. Hello, hello. From the Northeast. Hello, the Southeast and Central Mass at the core of it all. So thank you. And then we have a fantastic staff. We have Athena Haddon, who serves as our Central Mass Regional Coordinator, as well as our lead coordinator, Darryl Wright, who is a wonderful recovery coach, participates in everything that he can to be a visible MOAR staff member. Julie Pike doing the same. Congratulate Julie. She's gone from part-time to full-time. Yay, Julie, as a recovery coach. And we love her for that. Noel Sierra, that you have heard his beautiful booming voice. And I wish I could roll my R's like Noel, but I cannot at this point in my life. And then Jillian O'Brien, who has joined us with her legal sense and ability to organize like nobody I know, which is really and truly very wonderful. Kirsten Doherty, that manages 2 projects that are statewide, Speaking Out for Addiction Recovery and Parent Project. She's going to explain them. And I always love her masterful way of putting out charts for everyone to understand. Kelly Kidd, who is now our Western Mass Regional Coordinator. And we're so happy to have her because we were void of that representation for so very, very long. And then Leah Randolph, who has many, many hats, but with MOAR, she is our DEI chair. You're going to be hearing from her. And I am moving on to the next box to make sure I get everybody who is a MOAR staff member. And Kim Krosick, who is our beautiful beaming recovery support services coordinator in a very, very big way. And then if I move on here, we will also see Julie Bunch, who is our Northeast and Boston regional coordinator. And everybody knows who Julie is because she is so profound and wonderful. And then, let's see, and Scott could not be with us today, but we want to thank him for all his wonderful support and his help, which is really, really, really wonderful. So in moving on, I mentioned Leah. And so Leah Randolph is our DEI chair, and we want to acknowledge that she's also the Massachusetts Black Addiction and Alcohol Council president. So she's going to speak a little bit about what we have done regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and beyond words, how there's been some movement. So take it away, Leah.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's so good to see all of your faces. You know, I was usually like just sort of really upbeat about this, but you know, as we just look at the number of lives that we've lost through addiction, it's just so painful. So I think I would like to start with a moment of silence for all of those who've lost their lives to addiction, and in the hope and prayers that our work that we do as a collaboratives will help to begin to save more lives. So if we could just take a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you.
Leah, sorry to interrupt you, but right before, I just want to remind everybody, just for the interpreters, to slow down when they're sharing so that folks have a chance to interpret. Thanks.
Thank you, Jill. So I am the DEI chair for MOAR. And like Marianne said, you know, I probably wear many, many hats, but it, you know, what it means to me is that it gives me an opportunity to help in building relationships across the river, across the railroad lines, across you know, people's backgrounds and history, because what we do know in this awful thing called addiction, this spiritual manifestation of pain and agony that we all face, who I myself are in long-term recovery. And I'm grateful that, you know, that I was able to get sober at the time that I was. And so I think as a result of that, excuse me, my passion for this work continues. And so as we look at, you know, what is diversity and what's inclusion, You know, Marianne came to me and asked me if I would be interested in, you know, in helping. And I got a lot of folks from MOAR actually asked me if I would be interested in taking on this additional responsibility. I don't look at it like it's a job because it really isn't. It's a passion. And so since I've been with MOAR, the people, I think all of the folks that are working with MOAR and for MOAR are all on the same page of really understanding the importance that we all matter. You know, so we are specifically looking at, you know, race and ethnicity and understanding that people of color have been at a disadvantage in being able to access treatment and being able to, you know, find the resources that would be available in communities of color to be able to end, you know, to be able to end the stigma that's attached to it, and also to be able to provide services. So, you know, at MOAR, we have what's called the speaker series, and hopefully we'll put something up about our DEI speaker series, which is a fabulous way to get to know people from diverse communities who are either struggling with addiction or have a work as liaisons or provide programming, and really talking about what are the challenges that they've experienced and how MOAR can continue to help them to grow and to be more efficient in what it is that they're doing. And so there's some fantastic speakers from all over the country, and a lot of them from Massachusetts. So I implore you to really try to take a look at what MOAR is doing in around the speaker series, and you know, come in and learn. And then we also are working with Dr. Tulani Di Marseille, who is a woman of color, but she is also a fabulous organizer, presenter, and she has been helping MOAR to really work on a strategic plan moving forward into the future. You know, people create organizations like MOAR based on who you are and where you come from. And so, you know, we have to look at that and understand that there are, you know, Black organizations, there are white organizations, there are Asian, there are Spanish organizations. And so really the organizations reflect who you are as a person. And, you know, Marianne started MOAR, what, 40 years ago?
Oh, please.
But it was a reflection of who she was and who she is. The fact that we are probably ahead of a lot of organizations around what we're doing with DEI is also a reflection of who Marianne Frangulis is. And so we have a very diverse group of people that are now working for MOAR. We represent as many communities as possible and still looking to diversify even more. We have trainings for the staff that really look at, you know, how do you engage with people that are different from you in a positive way. But we also have conversations about what are my biases, you know, what are the things that are holding me back from being able to move forward? What are the things that I've learned that reflect, you know, who I am consciously and unconscious bias? So I think that, you know, with the initiatives that we have at MOAR, I think we're really moving forward, and it's an organization that, you know, people really, it's important to become members of MOAR and to be able to spread that information across the Commonwealth and across the country. The importance of really understanding and appreciating people's differences and embracing that, and also embracing, because what happens is that, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with fear, because we fear those things that we don't understand. So the more that we learn about each other, we start to let down those barriers, and we realize that there's more similarities that we have than not. So I think the other thing is working with Julie Bunch has been really great. And Julie, as Marianne mentioned, is the DEI lead. And she's got a lot of energy and is really out there in the community trying to ensure that we are in at all the tables where we need to be, and letting folks know that MOAR is here to help their voices to be heard, because that's what MOAR is all about. So a part of what I do outside of MOAR is working as the chair of the Massachusetts Black Alcoholism and Addictions Council. And so we are having a conference. This is the 4th conference that we've had in Massachusetts, but it's a long-term conference that has been going on for about 40 years outside of Massachusetts. And so we're calling it a mini BAI, which is a Black Alcohol and Addiction Institute. And the difference between an institute and just a conference and training is really that you're learning in a more intense level about a particular topic. And so at the Institute, we're going to be addressing, criminal justice, substance use disorder, mental health disorder, anxiety, depression. We're also looking at PTSD, suicide increases in the Black community, and all these, everything is really looking and focusing on the impact of all of these social and medical issues, the impact that they have on the Black community, and what are the recommendations that are coming from our trainers who are doctors and social workers and therapists. And we are also hearing from people with lived experience. And so that at the end of 2 days, which will be June 8th and June 9th, and on the end of those 2 days, on June 10th, we will be having a town hall meeting where we'll be discussing everything that we talked about in the Institute, and kind of looking at ways that impact can be helpful with organizations around cultural competency. And we'll be doing some other training. And I see Jen Parks here, who is really been responsible for helping us to access support and funding from the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services. So through Jen's office, we'll continue to be doing additional trainings outside of the mini BAI. It's very exciting, and we have youth that are going to be participating. So we have a website finally that's up, and it's called minibaiconference.com. So minibaiconference.com, and you can go there and you'll see all of our information. We have a number of scholarships due to the support from RISE, from BSAS, from MOAR, from Bay State, and from the George Floyd Foundation. And we'll have somebody there from the George Floyd Foundation. We'll be talking about the work that they're doing across the country as well. So I hope that many of you will attend the conference and let your voice be heard. We only have about 40 seats in person, and the rest will be online. So once you register, it's important, if you are applying for a scholarship, that you just note on the registration form that we have a checkbox that you're applying for a scholarship, and we will try to get to everybody who is applying for scholarships. So it's good to get in early. And I think that's it for now for me. I'm just happy to be here, and I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to learn from each other. And that's what we're going to be continuing to do in collaboration with MOAR and all the rest of the community-based organizations. So have a pleasant night. Thank you for attending. And I'm so grateful to see all of your faces, those that I see, and the others, I'm happy to see your names. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. You're such a fantastic DEI chair, and so wonderfully validating. And so I hope everybody who can will attend the mini BAI. I know I'll be there, so I'll get to see you if you come. So that will be really good. I also want for people to know that a lot of the materials that you will see and hear tonight we'll be putting on our own website. So I encourage you to go to www.moar hyphen, the dash in the middle, recovery, recovery.org. So that will be really, really good. And as Leah said, you know, she mentioned 40 years, maybe not quite, but it has been around since 1991 when a group of us just got together and said, we've got to start doing some speaking up. So I'm very pleased, but I take a day at a time to be in long-term recovery. And I also, at this point, want to also share that on June 7th, Leah did mention that we have a speaker series. So on June 7th at 6 p.m., you will hear from Della Blake, who is going to be sharing with us about the Black Addiction Counselor Education Program that the state has, and she helps to lead it, and it offers a wonderful, wonderful service. So that is beautiful. And speaking of beautiful, it's time to turn it over.
Yep. I'm going to put the information in the chat.
Okay, good. Put it in the chat.
I will. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Leah, again. And as I was saying, I am going to turn it now over to Noelle Sierra, who is going to be the MC for the rest of the evening. Take it away, Noelle.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marianne. Thank you and welcome everyone to this statewide alcohol and other drug awareness town hall meeting. And it is my job to get this bus moving forward, to keep the wheels turning. So I'm going to do that right now, beginning with our next speaker, who is the Assistant Director of Provider Support. And in her role, she oversees the Bureau's Workforce Development and Training and Recovery Support Service efforts. And of course, Leah had already mentioned her. So let's welcome Jen Parks.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
And I happen to be sitting in a quiet corner at the Worcester train station where I am going to be meeting up with my sister in a little while to drive down to New Jersey. So apologizes if there's any weird noises in the background. I think I found a good spot. So just a little caveat so you know where I'm at. It's really, really great to be here. I'm so glad that I was able to join you all. And thank you, Marianne, for inviting me. I always love talking about workforce development efforts. Another caveat, like there's probably 10 times more things going on at BSAS than I even have on my slides today. And so just know that there is a lot going on with workforce development in general across the department and across the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. So it's an exciting time for workforce development. You can move on to the next slide, please. Great. So one of the, So over the last few years, BSAS has been dedicating a lot more time and energy to enhancing the experience of the people who work in our funded and licensed system. And so that means that we have the Careers of Substance website, which is one of my proudest accomplishments. I started working at the department at the Bureau in 2006. And the creation and continual expansion and updating of this website, which we refer to as a central resource for anyone involved in preventing, intervening in, treating, and supporting recovery from addictions in Massachusetts. It's a place where folks can post jobs, job seekers can post their resumes, folks can go and look for trainings and events which are constantly being added and updated, and find a lot of other resources that we're kind of trying to constantly update. And, you know, anytime you go to that website and you see something missing, you can always go to the Contact Us page or just reach out to me directly and let me know. The most exciting part is that we're currently rounding the corner on a major redesign of the website. So what you see there today won't look like the logo that you're seeing on the screen, but that's a little bit of a glimpse of what's coming soon, and I'm really excited about what that's gonna look like. And another exciting resource that we've built over the past few years is the Recovery Coach Hub, which is specifically for recovery coaches and supervisors to access the most up-to-date information, communicate with each other about recovery coach-related activities, and really importantly, the hub is the online home of our regional recovery coach learning communities. So if you or someone you know is a practicing recovery coach, I would recommend that you hop into the Recovery Coach Hub. The website is here, and it's also going to be shared afterwards. And you can create a user profile and find your local recovery coach learning community. Next slide, please. So we know that another important way to support the workforce is to create opportunities for furthering education so folks can advance their careers. And so right now, our major education related activities include BASE and LACE, the Black and Latinx Addiction Counselor education programs, the Addiction Education Advisory Group, and the Mass Loan Repayment Program. As I hope many of you are aware, BASE and LACE are culturally responsive workforce development programs. One is for Black or African American students. I see Della here today. She's the director. And the other is for Latinx students. Janer Hernandez is the director of that program. And these are just two of the more than 15 addiction education providers which are approved by BSAS for the education that's required for LADAC certification, for LADAC licensure. And these programs also meet the requirements for KDAC certification through the Mass Board of Substance Abuse Counselor certification. The Addiction Education Advisory Group is made up of representatives from many of those approved addiction education providers, mostly from colleges and universities, but also a couple of
Did we lose Jennifer?
It appears so.
The train stop. My goodness.
Yeah, it seems like we lost
You're in
her
Worcester.
midstream there. All right, well, we'll keep moving forward. And if we can get her back on, just kind of give me a heads up. And with that being said, let's move on. First and foremost, before I introduce this next person, I'm going to start off with we need to put our hands together because this individual is celebrating a milestone tomorrow, and I wanna applaud this milestone. And I don't know if is she back?
Noelle?
Yes.
I believe that you are a little bit out of order. It's Senator Keenan's next.
He's not in the building now.
Oh, okay. Then you go into it. I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
for speaking up. Go ahead. Go ahead. You know more than I do. Thank you.
With that being said, I love Marianne. With that being said, our next speaker is celebrating a milestone. Like I said, she's celebrating 10 years of recovery. And so with that being said, she's also the manager of the substance use service at Health Resource in Action. And let's put our hands together and let's welcome Elizabeth Reardon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Noelle. Wow, thanks for mentioning that. I'm really grateful to be here with you all. I love this community. Really grateful for 10 years. I couldn't get 10 hours for many years. So just grateful to be in this space with you. And great to see some familiar friends and colleagues and some new friends and colleagues. Anyway, I'm here to talk about the Substance Use Helpline, just to give you some reminders and updates on kind of what's going on over at the helpline. For those of you who aren't, thank you, Marianne. Thanks, folks, who may not be familiar with it, the Health Resources in Action, but it's funded by BSAS. We've been funded by BSAS for over 20 years. And, you know, what we try to do is bridge people to services, anything from harm reduction to treatment, and recovery services, family supports, whatever it might be. We want to get folks the help that they need. And so just kind of want to share a few things that we're working on right now. So if you don't know, we're both a website and a line that you can call. We're 24/7. Anytime you call us, somebody is going to be there to pick up the phone. We have folks who speak English and Spanish, and we have a language line for over 100 other languages. We're also available for the deaf and hard of hearing, although I know that Karen Larson's here somewhere, and I know we've been kind of working on making that service even better for folks in the deaf and hard of hearing community. We really approach our work from a harm reduction approach. We try to meet folks where they're at, really listen to what their needs are. We try to be strengths-based, you know, and our call takers are truly amazing folks. Many of them are in recovery, but all of them have lived experience with substance use disorders and just have a real passion and compassion, you know, for the callers. So a few things that we're working on, we are actually revamping our website. We're doing a refresh, which I think, you know, really speaks to, we built our website in its current version about 5 years ago, and it really speaks to the changes that are happening in the language around recovery and addiction and substance use disorders. And so we really want to shift that, but we also want to, I may be reaching out to some of you all to really make sure that we are, you know, showing all of the different pathways and resources available on our website so folks can access those. I'm thinking about some of the recovery centers and really centering those, and thinking about youth and young adult supports. And so we're in that process now. We're hoping it will be ready late summer, early fall. We're also creating a new search page to make it even easier for folks to search and access the treatment and other kind of services that they need. We're also going to be doing a pilot with residential providers in the next few months as a first step to really rolling out our residential waitlist system enhancements and our capacity management system. So we're hoping to start in the next few months. And so again, we'll probably be reaching out to some of you. The last thing I will say is that in order to give the very best and most accurate, tailored referrals to folks, we need to make sure that our database is up to date with all of the programs. And so we have what's called a provider portal. So if you work at any sort of program across the state, you can have access to that portal to make sure that the information about your program is accurate. We also want to know if you're serving a particular community, the LGBTQ plus community, people of color, whatever it might be. If that is particular in the work that you're doing, we want to make sure that our call takers know that and the folks who visit our website know that. So I could go on and on. We've got lots happening. The last thing I'll say is we also just recently have been able to give support to folks who are having issues around their gambling and problem gambling. And so we also can really support folks in that way as well. I'll stop there. I know there's a lot of folks on the docket tonight, but thank you all for all the love in the chat. And I will put the helpline info in the chat, and I'll also put my email. Feel free to reach out with any questions at all. Thanks, Marianne, and thanks, Noelle.
All right, thank you
Have a
so
great
much.
night.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Nothing but good things going on over there because it's the best support that we can give individuals. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna kick it back over to Jennifer so she can finish her presentation to us. So take it away, Jen.
Thank you, Noelle, and sorry about that. I should have getting on my phone instead of trying to be on Wi-Fi. But anyway, I'm here back. I'm glad to be here again and picking up where we left off. So On the next slide, we're going to be looking ahead a little bit. We can go to the next slide. That says, sorry. There we go. Perfect. So looking ahead, VSAS is working on a number of initiatives that will allow us to expand our education supports. And we're particularly focusing, this is perfect, just on the heels of what Elizabeth was talking about, really particularly focusing on the workforce representing Black, Indigenous, and other people of color or BIPOC communities. We're hoping to expand, there you go. We're hoping to expand culturally responsive workforce development programs, which are currently base and LACE, but we want to expand that to a broader set of students from all over the Commonwealth. We're also looking to contract with a vendor to provide funding for paid internships in a wide range of settings. We know that oftentimes one of the biggest challenges to entering or moving up in the field is the financial burden that's associated with taking unpaid internships. So keep an eye out for that in the coming months. We're also planning to release an RFR in the next few months, seeking a single vendor or a group of collaborators to run what is already a very robust set of trainings and educational opportunities for the peer recovery workforce. And these are going to include, as they can currently include, trainings required for becoming a certified addiction recovery coach. We're also hoping to create a fund that will allow education programs to provide scholarships specifically to students who wish to advance or join the field of SUD work. And again, that will be prioritizing BIPOC students. Next slide. Actually, the previous one, sorry, you were right. Perfect. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but as you all know, training is at the heart of everything we do related to workforce development activities. And we contract with a number of vendors to provide statewide and agency-specific training and technical assistance. All of the trainings listed on this slide are offered throughout the year via AdCare Educational Institute, the Institute for Health and Recovery, Praxis, Health Resources in Action, the Center for Strategic Support, and sometimes other vendors as needed. And we're also really close to launching a new e-learning management system, which will be create an opportunity for employees within our system, both at VSAS and out in the community treatment world and recovery world, to access a range of self-paced trainings where they can also track their progress and earn CEUs. Next slide, only a couple left. Process improvement is one of the really important aspects of workforce development. And we sort of want to provide as much support as we can to support the work environment within our provider organizations. And the systems that we're working within. So some of the ways that we do that is through training on NIATEX process improvement, which helps groups of change leaders who are representing people at all levels working at a program to come together around ideas for improving their services. Connecting programs to the pharmacists from EMO Health, which is a medication management pharmacy program. It helps the pharmacists at EMO Health help to better manage medications for patients and clients in our programs. We provide opportunities for workers to join communities of practice around specific job titles or focus areas. We provide trainings for staff at all levels on resiliency, ethics, boundaries, and racial equity. We're always supporting recruitment, retention, and leadership opportunities for workers of color, and we're going to be doing more of that in the future. And working with experts at Case Western Reserve University to assess and support the efficacy of our co-occurring enhanced programs. Raising up the importance of providing gender-specific and pregnancy enhanced services, and hosting recovery coach learning communities within our peer recovery support centers, which I mentioned earlier. And the last two slides are really just resources that we can share with folks. A lot of the resources that I talked about today are listed here, and As always, folks can feel free to reach out to me. I actually did not include my email. I'm sorry about that, but Marianne can get to me, and folks, I can put it in the chat right before we move on. And that is it for me. So I really appreciate the time, and thank you all so much. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. One more time for Jennifer. If it was in person, it'd be like, yeah. With that being said, our next speaker is an advocate for his district and has spearheaded legislative responses to public health issues such as tobacco reform, substance use prevention, treatment and recovery, mental health and treatment access, and more. Is very pleased that he cares so much about addiction recovery. Let's put our hands together and let's welcome Senator John Keenan.
Great. Thanks, Noel. Good afternoon, everybody. Or good evening, everybody. It's great to be here, and thank you, Jennifer, for the update on all the work that's going on. So many people doing some really, really great things. I thought I'd just touch briefly on where we're at the state level. As you know, the House budget came out a couple of weeks ago. We are in the midst of reviewing the Senate budget and preparing amendments, which will have to be filed by tomorrow at 1 p.m. And as I look at the Senate budget, I am encouraged that, again, there is a substantial commitment to behavioral health, both mental health and substance use. And that's just so critically important. As we look at the numbers, for instance, that were just released by the CDC, as much as we were pleased that there had been some progress here in Massachusetts relative to opioid overdose deaths, so much of that was erased and set back because of COVID. And we see those numbers rising again, and that's really, really worrisome. And so in the opioid field, we're going to continue to work on prevention, obviously within our schools, and harm reduction is an area where, thankfully, I think every day there's more and more attention being brought to that. Whereas maybe 4 years ago and 2 years ago, harm reduction was something that the state government didn't seem to be all that aware of, or if they were aware of it, weren't that interested in it. It was considered by many to be kind of cutting edge or a little bit out there. Even though we have had needle exchange programs in the Commonwealth, the idea of providing safe supplies or test strips, all of that was a bit of a step for people. But with the work of members of the Senate, in particular, Senator Sierra of the Cape has done some really great work in this respect. That idea of harm reduction is gaining ground. And that means still we have a lot more to do, but it's becoming more normalized from the perspective of many in the legislature. And that is a huge step forward. So on harm reduction, I'll tell you our efforts will continue. And in particular, it's somewhat controversial. It's something that a few years ago wasn't really even in the conversation, but there's been a lot of steps taken to explore the idea, and even to go beyond the idea of exploring, but to implement in some way, perhaps in a community like Somerville, safe consumption sites. And I think that's something that we have to continue to work on, to get people to understand them, to understand the role that they play. In February, I went down, and with 2 members of my staff, we went down and we visited the safe consumption sites in New York City. I have been to the safe consumption sites personally. I drove up one weekend and visited the sites up in Montreal, observing them personally throughout the day and into the evening and even the early morning hours, and then meeting with the people who run those programs. I flew out to Vancouver and did the same thing. Basically spent a couple of days just in the neighborhood, sitting on park benches, talking to people, and then a couple of days visiting the programs that they have out there. And based on that, it's my belief that there is certainly a role for them. And while the political will may not be there, we do have a community that is taking very strong steps towards safe consumption sites, Somerville. And we've been in touch with them. I met with the mayor a few weeks ago. We've been in touch with Fenway Health, who's been retained by the city of Somerville to assist them in moving this project forward. So I'm hopeful that we will get to the stage where we will have one, and that we will be able to get the data that we need to determine if they're working. And I believe the data will show that they do work, but what location is best, and what are the next steps for making sure that those resources are available to people. Another piece that we continue to work on is relative to recovery coaches. I grow more and more optimistic about that as we move through the budget process and as we approach the end of the legislative session. There is much more awareness to the need of recovery coaches to set up a board to license them, and we've got estimates as to what that would cost to put the infrastructure in place to allow for licensing, which would then lead to insurance coverage for the services they provide. We've got that information. We're moving forward with that, and I'm optimistic that by the end of the session that we will have made significant strides, if not succeeded in getting recovery coaches into a licensing process and covered here. Fingers crossed. Obviously, I've learned in this business that there are no guarantees, but we are going to continue to push that. And we've gotten some impetus or momentum for that as a result of the Methamphetamine Commission report that was filed. I think it was a year ago, maybe it might have been last year's budget, where I had filed to get a methamphetamine commission established. And that commission was established. It did meet. It met several times. It's issued its report. It's made a series of recommendations. And one of those recommendations is for recovery coaches, recognizing the role that they play in the recovery process and making sure that there is a licensing structure and that the insurance companies will cover the services that are provided. So that will help attract people to doing that work and make sure that they are compensated and make sure that the services, again, are covered by insurance. And I think that's really, really important. So we have an awful lot to do. I remain forever the optimist. When I look at the numbers, I do get discouraged. The numbers are just so alarming. But I get encouraged every time I come from a meeting with folks like you who are out there doing such incredible work. And it truly is inspiring. And I mean that in all sincerity. If you're doing what you're doing, then we should be doing what we can to help you. We have that, I don't think it's even, I'd say, obligation. It's just something we absolutely should be doing because it's the right thing to do. So I am hopeful that as we move through the balance of this legislative session, through the budget process, through likely supplemental budgets, maybe even a little bit more ARPA funding, and as we wrap up bills over the course of the next couple of months, that we move these items and substance use bills forward, and that we continue to make progress or recover from the COVID and then start to make progress forward again. It's so important that we link people to the resources that are available. And that's the link that was broken over the last couple of years. We have to reestablish that in order to move forward. So I'm excited about the work, and I really, again, I thank you for all that you do. It is so encouraging, so inspiring, and together we'll just keep working on this. And hopefully someday there won't be a need for meetings like this, but we can't be naive to think that that's going to be anytime soon. And so the work just has to continue. So again, I thank you all for what you do.
Thank you so much, Senator Keenan. Thank you for being here and taking the time to share. And as we keep moving forward, our next speaker is the VSE Recovery and Outreach Liaison, also on the Mass Council on Gambling and Health. Let's put our hands together and let's welcome Jody Neely.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces and I see a lot of new folks too. Thank you, Noel. Thank you, Marianne, for asking me. Just so you know, it's the Mass Council on Gaming and Health. That's what we are. And we've been that way for a couple of years because we not only deal with problem gambling, but we've been adding video gaming. I'm not the video gaming expert, but video gaming and problematic gambling, the warning signs are almost the same. So we're doing a lot of work on that, and there's not a lot out there. So, you know, it's important that we do that. Anyway, for those of you who don't know me, and Kirsten and Marianne know me well, that for me to slow down is like asking Marianne to slow down. So I'm trying. I am a gambler, and I'm a smoker, drinker, and a gambler in recovery. And my 14-year anniversary of being free of a bet, that's how we call it in Gamblers Anonymous, the pathway of my recovery, will be June 2nd. 14 years, and it'll be 30 years of no drinking. So yeah, it's a big one for me. I can't say I'm in recovery from 30 years of drinking because I did what a lot of people do, and why I come to these things whenever I'm invited, or I go to the many wonderful recovery centers. I talk about this co-occurring factor that, you know, I quit drinking when I was 37. So now you know how old I am. But I didn't go into recovery. I didn't go into recovery centers. I didn't really go to AA. I just thought it was a thing. It was in my family, and I just, you know, I quit drinking, but I didn't do any work. You know, I mean, it was hard to quit drinking, but I didn't do the work on the backside. And that's why recovery is so important. And with gambling, it really sort of snuck up on me. When I was 50 years old, I just sort of tipped over the edge into slot machines. And, you know, within 2 years, I had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And within, was it 3 years? Or within 3 years, I was in jail for embezzlement. And this is the thing that can happen with gambling. One, it's a hidden addiction, which is why it is so important. You know, Liz talked about HRI putting it on their website. So they're doing the work out there. The Mass Council is still doing the work with problematic gambling. I'm still out there as much as I can be on the road, raising awareness about this hidden addiction that sneaks up on you because, you know, bingo, well, that's charity. Stocks, well, that's business. Horse racing, well, okay, maybe that's gambling. Lottery, oh, that's just fun. This is how it's viewed. And if those of us, particularly in recovery, so the statistic I always give is 3 out of 4 gamblers like me are also alcoholics. 60% have some kind of tobacco addiction. 50% have a mental health issue. 40% have had drug use issues. We are so more at risk than anybody else out there, that we have to be especially mindful. And that's why, you know, I love my folks in my peer recovery centers. I haven't gotten to a lot of the new ones yet, but hopefully I will, because you are the folks I want to talk to. You are the folks I don't want going down the road that I did. You know, I don't want somebody in recovery from alcohol doing pretty well, but scratching tickets and getting that little buzz in their head that makes them feel like they're high and going, oh, this is pretty good. And then we escalate. Not everybody in Gamblers Anonymous, as I say, in my pathway to recovery, there are folks there that can drink. There are folks there that can smoke, but not gamble. So it's individual for everybody. But what do they say? Awareness helps you prepare, you know, be prepared, be aware. And for those of us in recovery, just to know that gambling is as devastating to a life, to a family, to the body, to the mind, to the spirit as any other addiction out there. And because it's misunderstood by the public, because there's not a lot of awareness about it, there's so much shame and even more stigma, because parents are like, what do you mean you can't play the lottery? What do you mean you can't bet on this game? Sports betting is coming to Massachusetts, not legal yet, but it is barreling down the Mass Pike towards us. And it is going to, well, I can say this to you guys, but it is going to affect a lot of lives. It is going to affect a lot of lives. People who never did this before, or who did FanDuel or DraftKings sort of innocuously, are going to start betting on sports. And we need to be prepared because people do not understand how dangerous it can be. And for those of us in the recovery community, we need to understand. So warning signs for gambling, you know, one, a co-occurring factor. So if you're in recovery from something, which most people here are, you have to be really mindful. Are you betting more than you used to? You know, maybe you used to spend $1 a week on a lottery ticket. Now you're spending $5. Now you're spending 10. So it's progressive, right? So you're playing more frequency. Your bet is going off. You're starting to hide it or lie about it to yourself or to your loved ones. It's starting to take over your mind. We know how addiction lives in our head, and we rationalize what our behaviors are like nobody else can. So if you know anybody in your life, and because I speak to you guys, but I speak to all the people that you know out there, who may be gambling, and that, you know, they've sort of been happy about it, and then all of a sudden they've changed. That could mean that they're moving down this continuum towards recreational gambling, which is legal if you're over 21. That's fine. I'm not against gambling. Council's not against gambling. We're neutral on that. We're neither for nor against it, but we are for preventing destruction if we can. In our casinos, we have a program called the Game Sense program. The only state in this state, in terms of gambling, certain parts of gambling, the harm reduction part is far beyond the best at any state because we took it from Canada. So we have these Game Sense advisors who are right in the casinos. Friendly, wonderful people who can build relationships with frequent gamblers. And if someone wants to take a break, they can voluntarily self-exclude. That's one of the things I always try to talk about on these calls because a lot of people don't know about it. It's basically banning yourself from the casino. You can do it for a year or 3 years or 5 years. And then after that, if you're good, you can do it for a lifetime. It's a contract with a Mass Gaming Commission, and you can do it remotely 24/7. We have the Encore casinos open 24 hours, the Game Sense Center, so you can call the Encore line and someone will do you a remote voluntary exclusion right on the phone. You don't have to go to the casino anymore because that was sort of dumb, right? I'm trying to avoid going to the casino, but I have to go to the casino to voluntarily self-exclude. We don't do that. And then another feature of the voluntary self-exclusion is if they ask for a follow-up, they get me. And I will call somebody a couple weeks after they did and see how they're doing. Do they need any resources? I mean, there's not that many gambling resources. There's outpatient treatment centers, there's private practice folks, no inpatient. The GA meetings are like up and down, they're open, they're closed, you know, who knows? But I'm sort of hooked into the Gamblers Anonymous network, so I've directed a lot of people that way. So there are a few things that we can do, but mostly it's raising awareness and watching out for those in your life and just knowing the warning signs. And the warning signs are similar to other things, like I say, to video gaming, to any kind of addiction. You know, we know, like those of us who are aware, we know when something's getting worse. The person it's happening to doesn't. They're in pre-contemplation, but we know. So I'll put my email in the chat. And if anybody needs to reach out to me, if they have someone in their life who's struggling or they want some resources, you know, there are not a lot of places that have peers in recovery for gambling that are in the field. So we're few and far between. And so I like to spread myself around, as those of you in the peer recovery centers know. So can't say hello to everybody I know, but I hope to get out on the road again soon. I am going to Northampton, I think next week, I hope. It's good to see you all. And Marianne and all, thank you so much for letting me share tonight. Take care.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jody. Awesome. What we're going to do right now is we've been going for an hour, right? So we're going to take a 30-second eye break. We know that there are people that are doing signing and there are people that are staring at the computer and watching this. So let's just take a 30-second eye break. And when we come back, we'll continue with our next speaker. All right, 30 seconds is up. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Jody Neely, our last speaker. And next, we have a community advocate and a mother of a son in recovery who has been with MOAR and has really taken the time to introduce this new foundation to us. So without further ado, let's put our hands together and let's welcome Trudy Avery, who's going to introduce this foundation and the team that's part of the foundation, and also some information is going to be given for everyone to have.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. In addition to being the mother of a son in long-term recovery, my son Corey's 35, going on almost 6 years of a solid recovery from an opiate addiction. So very, very proud of him. And I've been very grateful to be a board member at MOAR. Marianne, I don't even know how many years now. We've known one another for quite a while. So I just absolutely love the work that MOAR does. And again, very grateful for being on the board. More recently, I joined the board of a brand new foundation based in Boston called the Let's Give It Up Foundation. The foundation gives people in recovery the tools and courage to find their own voice and share their struggles through arts and music, redirecting pain through a shared community. I had the pleasure of meeting my very dear friend, Pat St. James, who's actually sitting next to me. I met Pat through my career when I worked for Caring Treatment Centers. Pat is an attorney in family law, and she is the founder of the Let's Give It Up Foundation, as well as an amazing songwriter. So Pat will give you a little bit more background on the foundation, and I'm pleased to call on my friends.
Well, thank you, Trudy. And I just want to say before I get started on what we're doing, I'm so impressed with everything I've been hearing so far. I just want to give a shout out to you all and, for the work that you're doing. It's fabulous. As Trudy said, I'm the founder of the Let's Give It Up Foundation, which we just started just 2 years ago or so. And it all happened by happenstance. I have a client, I'm a lawyer in Boston, and I had a client whose daughter went through years of recovery, and she wrote a play called Recovery, which was going to play off Broadway. And she said to me, oh, I wish I knew a composer, just how she speaks. I wish I knew a composer who could write a song based on the Serenity Prayer, because that's, a big part of the play. And I thought about it. I said, well, I could do that for you. She just thought, she misheard, like, how could my lawyer be writing this? But I've done music for a long time with numerous people in the industry. And so I did. And that's how it got started. And it played off Broadway and to good reviews, and people like the song, et cetera. And then I want to give a shout out to Chief Justice Paula Carey, who's recently retired, but of the Chief Justice of all the trial courts in the Commonwealth. And you'll see she's on this. And I say, thank you, Chief Justice, for joining us, because I know that this is very near and dear to your heart, these programs. And I was actually up at her place in Maine. We've been friends for a long time. And I had written her wedding song when she got married. And she said, could I play? Do you do anything less? So I said, oh, well, I got this off Broadway thing going on. So I actually went out to my car where I had a CD, thank you, and played it for her. And at that point she said, could I use it? And I said, well, sure, for what? And she said, well, in the courts. And I said, gee, nobody plays music for me when I go to court, that kind of thing. And she said, no, for the drug courts. So it was a big learning thing for me that we actually had drug courts. And I see this as part of the program later. Instead of taking people, and throwing them in jail, through the work of the judges in the Commonwealth, starting by Justice Maldonado 20 years ago, we have drug courts to try to give people a chance, and in recovery, and go through court monitored programs rather than going to jail. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, how grateful I am to the chief for getting us going. And so we've been working with the drug courts and also with other organizations. And what we do is we would like to work with various people, like we are with MOAR and other programs that we've worked with, and the drug courts, to give people in recovery a chance to express themselves through either music or art or writing, if they like poetry, whatever it is that's their thing that makes them feel that there's something worth living for. And I've learned so much in doing this. We've worked for many young people who have said they get up every morning and they they don't think that there's anything in their life. If they don't get their fix, they might as well just commit suicide. And, so we've got the idea of taking people into Berkeley to record their songs, either over my song, the Serenity song, or their own music that they've written. And they get to write their story either in rap or however they want to do it, or a poem they write, and we take it, we make it into a song or music, and it's been, to me, an amazing time to learn about what's going on and to really reach out to help people. And I want to, on this Zoom already, you'll see Ed and Shanna Harper with the Let's Give It Up Foundation, who are board members, and Bob Patton, who's the long-suffering professor from Berkeley, who has been in this from the ground level, who has taken kids into Berkeley or into his own studio and has given them the chance to record their music, et cetera, and then mix it so that when they leave, they have their own MP3 that they can, I hope, play for their friends and their family. And maybe remember, if they start thinking, about maybe drugs or alcohol is the way, maybe they can play their song or whatever, what they've produced to remind them that there's something that they love and that there's other things in life. And I'd like to give a shout out to Bernice King, who's also on this. She is featured in the video that we're going to show you in a minute or so. And she's also from Berkeley School of Music, and she has sung the Serenity song, over which we've brought in other people. And those people include Ava Greco, who is in recovery and is a student at the Berkeley School of Music, who's fabulous. You'll see a little bit about her story in this. And through MOAR, and I can't tell you how happy we are to have the relationship with your wonderful organization. They referred to us Gerard Touche, who you'll see on here, but he really is called Strategy, S-T-R-A-T-E-G, and he's featured on the video and really just is a presence, which is amazing. And I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been to work with him. And he's very interested in being involved with us and helping other people. And I told him he's really stuck now because he's in, and Joey Megahertz couldn't be on this. He had a family issue, but he's our director. And you'll see him in the video as well, working with people. I'd like to just mention to all of you, I know you're involved with working with people in recovery and, through your different programs or even in the gambling, anything, that we have numerous projects kind of in the pipeline that we're now beginning to work on. MOAR referred another woman to us, Nanette, who wrote a powerful song called Girl Without a Name. It's amazing. And she came into my office and we're starting to work on it. And what we're looking for right now is a woman who would like to write her words, her story, to come in as a rap part over the part of the song that talks about girl without a name, because that's Nanette's story. And it would be very powerful to have someone else come in and tell their story about where they may feel they didn't have a name or what they went through in recovery. So if any of you has anybody in your program who might be interested, Trudy's going to leave her phone.
I'll put my contact info in the chat. So anybody, please feel free. If you have someone that's interested in partnering with us, collaborating with us, we really look forward to growing the opportunities for everyone.
And one other project that we're immediately starting to work on is a children's animated film, short, film based on a song called Little Care I. And what we're looking for is people either to record some music for it, to redo the song, but also people to absolutely do the illustration. So some people whom you are working with may be interested in art, for example, who might come in and, give us ideas of, well, that character would look this way, or that character would look this way, that kind of thing. This scene could look like that. And if they end up working with us, Joey Megahertz, who's you'll see in the video we're about to show, he voluntarily said, well, I'll bring them into the film studio and I'll show them how we make like a cartoon, an animated feature and that kind of stuff. So I can't tell you how excited I am that so many people show up and say, what can I do to help? What can I do? So there's a lot of resources that I think we have that we would love to use to help people that you're working with.
So thanks to Noelle and Marianne for allowing us this opportunity. And I guess we're ready to go with the video.
Absolutely. So I'm going to turn it over. I think Athena, you're going to show the video. This is the video based on the Serenity Prayer. Thank you.
Giving hope and purpose through music and the arts to people in recovery.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I can change, and the courage to change the things I can.
God, thank you for putting me in this position to stay on track, to keep moving forward, to never go back.
Crying out to me.
There's nothing, no time.
Help me do what I can.
No feeling, no hope.
All that I can.
No point.
Grant me the wisdom, the vision to know.
Let me remember the good and the bad, the progress I've made, the courage to wave that white flag. The loved ones I've lost, the good times we've had, to feel these emotions with happy comes sad.
To get myself out of this.
Light the lantern to guide us out of the dark.
I've gotta stop believing.
But at times it's so dark, it's just hard to see. Some nights I never sleep, some nights I just cry and I weep.
Grant me the peace, the strength, the wisdom.
Drugs aren't my friend, they'll bring me to the wrong end.
Please, oh God, above.
Some nights I'm at the edge, I look down, it's so steep. Some nights just drag on, some nights feel like weeks.
Please, oh God, I need your love.
To reach out to others, to lend them a hand. We're all sisters and brothers, we all share the same land. Because the pain of addiction we understand. Survival of the fittest, we don't leave behind any man. Some are too sick, no matter what they've been through. The disease so strong, it grabs a hold of you. The person inside is fighting every day, praying and hoping to find a way. So hopeless we feel, we just want them to stay, want to do anything for their pain to go away.
I'll be tied to my demons for life, but I know heroin cuts deeper than the knife. I'm genuine when I'm begging to you. Please remove these obsessions, forgive my past intentions. I know my mom wasn't proud to hear, but I've been working to keep my veins clear. The booze and the drugs won't get me out of here.
We must stay strong to prove them all wrong. For those that don't understand why together we've been.
Can you hear us?
All that I can.
Please hear us.
Grant me the wisdom, the vision to know your plan.
As time goes by, they say it heals. They don't know how it feels. The pain that I felt so unique and so deep. I felt paralyzed, I felt down on my knees. But I'm starting to realize as I look up towards the skies.
Gotta stop believing.
God, I know I made the wrong choice.
All lies.
And now I'm practicing my own voice.
Grant me the peace, the
I'm not alone, I'm home. There's still work to be done. With each and every day, up comes the sun.
I'm genuine when I'm begging to you.
above all things.
I'm surrounded by allies, angels in disguise. Is this what you meant when you said you'd be by my side? Whenever I'm able to share, no one denies. They just listen and empathize. We're created to serve one another. Together we'll rise.
I'll be tied to my demons for life, but I know heroin cuts deeper than the knife.
Together we can recover. Though the pain never lies, we just don't have to suffer. We prove that there is hope, however slippery the slope. We live for the loved ones we've lost, our ego's the cost.
Light the lantern to guide us out of the dark.
The faith that their spirit is driving the bus, eventually realizing that the blessing is in us.
I reached my hell, can't dig no more. I rose from death, without chains I'll soar.
Wow. We just need to let that breathe for a minute. Woo. That was powerful. I'm still trying to collect myself, so give me a second, because I don't know how you can hear that and not kind of get a little emotion going on. You know, that was real powerful. Let's Give It Up Foundation. Listen, we're going to continue to push people in that direction because there's so much talent. There's so many people that have talents, whether it's vocals, whether it's penning, putting their penning, you know, pen their pain into parables, you know, putting their life on paper. You know, we're going to continue to push people in that direction for those that have the skill and have the talent and want to do that. You know, so everybody that's here today, and I know I might be going on and pontificating, but if you know someone who, you know, who has some kind of a talent that can either sing, write, rap, even producing, you know, making beats, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff, you know, send them towards Trudy, send them in that direction, because it's another pathway. You know, it's another pathway, and all of us can say we know people that turn to music during their early recovery, you know, and how music helps individuals and helps people move forward. You know, Gerard, bro, you was kicking it, man. That was powerful, man. That was awesome, bro. Woo,
Thank
that
you,
was
Noel.
powerful.
Noel, I wrote that about my best friend that died in 2013. Part of that poem, the words, the lyrics, and the other part was from the overdose vigil last August 30th, and it just came together beautifully, and I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your gift. Thank you for putting yourself out there. You know, we put it out there, we sent it out, and you know, we weren't sure who was going to jump at the opportunity, but you did it, brother, and it sounds amazing. It sounds awesome. Trudy, thank you for introducing that to us. You know,
Oh, you're very welcome. Again, we're very, very grateful for giving us this opportunity. And thanks to Ed and Shanna, they just put the direct YouTube link in the chat. So please feel free to cut and paste it so you have direct access to it. And again, I'll put my contact info as well. So anybody, please feel free to reach out to me.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I can't help it. That's just powerful. All right. So let's keep it going. Our next speaker is the Regional Substance Abuse Prevention Coordinator at Mystic Valley Public Health Coalition. And so let's put our hands together and let's welcome Liz Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, I don't know if I should thank you for making me go after that presentation, that video. But I'm very, very honored to be here tonight. So thank you, Mary Ann and MOAR, for inviting me to present a little bit about alcohol and alcohol policy related issues in Massachusetts. I did have some slides ready, but I'm not going, just a couple, but I'm going to see if I can utilize, no, I can't, see if I can utilize the chat instead. There were some numbers that I wanted to share with you all, and I'm going to put them in the chat. There we go. So I thought I'd start with looking at alcohol by some numbers. Some of these may be familiar to many of you. 140,000 people die from excessive alcohol use each year in the United States. 30% of Massachusetts high school youth use alcohol, with students identifying as LGBTQ+ having higher rates, and students of color having higher rates of having their first drink of alcohol before the age of 13, which, as many of you know, is an indicator for future addiction. From 2014 to 2018, Massachusetts had 30 new cases of alcohol-associated cancers every day. For those of you who don't know, alcohol is known to cause 6 types of cancer, and breast cancer being one of those. And during a recent data collection by the Massachusetts Alcohol Policy Coalition, which I'll mention a little bit later, 53% of home delivery and or cocktails to go orders were delivered to survey participants without any ID checks at all. So they were left on the doorsteps. A couple cases, they were left on a dormitory steps without checking any ID. And I was actually one of those survey participants, and the alcohol was left with my 10-year-old with no ID check. The ABCC, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, conducted compliance checks recently and found that deliveries made by one particular delivery service failed 100% of the time, delivering alcohol to underage youth every single time they were delivering. And according to the most recent data that we have, the total cost of excessive drinking in Massachusetts, it costs over $5.6 billion, which means that for every drink in Massachusetts, it costs Massachusetts is incurring a cost of $1.93. So what can we do about this? How can we protect youth from alcohol harms? And we know from years of research and practice, and the US does, and Massachusetts does a great job, but there's still more work to do. We know that to make a significant impact in protecting youth and others from alcohol harms, we need to look at the 4 Ps: product, price, placement, and promotion. So the cheaper the prices, whether through tax cuts, discounts, or happy hour, the more kids will drink. The more youth-friendly the products, like hard Mountain Dew or cinnamon vodka, the more youth will drink. The more alcohol ads youth see, whether on the T, in social media, on the TV, the more youth will drink. The more places and ways alcohol is sold, whether through home delivery, beer gardens, sporting events, local convenience stores, the more places alcohol is sold, the more youth will drink. And like I said, we're fortunate that Massachusetts does a lot to protect youth from alcohol harms through certain regulations. But since, even before, but even now more so since the COVID pandemic, alcohol access is burgeoning in Massachusetts and across the country. And so many of those protections are being threatened. I'm very proud to say that Marianne, among others, have joined me in forming the Massachusetts Alcohol Policy Coalition. We're a group of concerned prevention professionals and parents who gather to share information and raise awareness about the importance of maintaining these protections. Anyone is welcome to join. And if you're interested in joining our efforts, you can please contact me. I'll put my email in the chat. I also want to thank Marianne and MOAR for inviting me to share this information tonight and for hosting these crucial conversations.
Thank you, Liz. This is really, really wonderful, but alarming at the same time. And I don't want to take Noel's spot. So are you here, Noel?
Oh, yes, I'm complete. I apologize. I thought I unmuted myself. I was sitting here rambling on. No, it is alarming and powerful information. Thank you so much for sharing those numbers. You know, I live in Rhode Island, and during the pandemic, the sales of alcohol jumped up 700%, they said. 700, imagine that. Woo. So thank you so much. And it's something to help open our eyes. Our next speaker is the director of the Massachusetts Bureau of Substance Addiction Services. and she is going to be speaking. So let us welcome Deirdre Calvert.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. And Athena, I think
Yes.
you're pulling up my slides for me. So I want to thank Marianne, MOAR, all of my peers who are on here tonight, and allowing me to share like I do every time Marianne asks. So I'm really grateful to be here. So I am a person in long-term recovery, and I am the Bureau Director for the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services in the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. I'm going to talk a little bit today just about the permanent housing measure that we have. I know that everybody's reading about what's happening down in MassCass, and it really just underscores that we have to take care of individual social determinants of health, which includes housing. So, you know, when I was a clinician, I would, you know, have all these deadlines to meet, you know, like, you know, the treatment plans are due, and people's, you know, have they stayed sober for how long, you know, because that's a measure of who, you know, how well you're doing and how well the person's doing. But really nobody was going to listen to anything I had to say if we had to figure out how to get shoes for their children, if they were in an abusive relationship, if they didn't have some place to live that was safe. So as we kind of reflect on everything that's happening down at Mass and Cass, we really have to support people's social determinants of health. So that brings me to our presentation, where we're going to talk about just this one specific issue. And I hope every time I come, I'll try and dive deep into some issues. Next slide, please. And if I look over to my right, it's because I have my notes and I don't want to mess up. So again, thank you, and allowing me to speak. So next slide. So we have housing and housing related supports. So we have deployed in the last year $22 million in funding for housing stability and housing supports. And I'll differentiate between the two. This is the first time that the Department of Public Health is actually paying for housing. So permanent supported housing. So we are really excited about this and talking about it. And then the housing stability supports. This is, you know, one of the misconceptions is that you move somebody from Mass and Cass, you know, into their own place, or from wherever you pick a location where somebody's been chronically homeless. It's not like they're going to move in, go to Bed Bath & Beyond, and everything's going to be fine. They still need a lot of supports around there. They haven't maybe lived alone. They haven't slept inside. For many people, they've been sleeping rough. So we have these housing stability supports. So next slide. So we'll go through kind of both programs. So the housing stability supports is a $10 million initiative that reinforces people's recovery and addiction by, you know, having all of these permanent, you know, supportive, you know, factors that are protecting them. So they help develop independent living skills such as fiscal responsibility, get a regular household upkeep, you know, and establish strong connections to providers. It facilitates access to local childcare development. And these programs are split between our permanent housing and our transitional housing. So next slide, please. All right, so then our low threshold housing, and this is so exciting. This is maybe what people have heard. So if you think about what's going down, and you've heard in the newspaper, we have transitional housing, which is the hoteling, which is a very transitional place while people look for permanent spaces. This is permanent. They're not going to be asked to leave. So since we started this about a little over a year ago, we have housed over 153 individuals permanently. Only 2 people have left as of right now, and that's because they were arrested on warrants. We are holding both apartments for them so they can, when they come out and are released, they still have a place to go. This is just phenomenal. These are spread throughout the Commonwealth. They're not just in Boston. In fact, out of those 153 people, it's only about 80-ish people who've been, you know, been housed from the Mass and Cass area. So this is just really important. Next slide. So the impact on these impact on these programs. They have the immediate impact on people's lives. It eliminates housing related stress, helps them save money and pay off debts that may have been hanging over them, and bridges the gap between exiting treatment and obtaining recovery services. So this is like unbelievable that we're able to do this, where it's another worry that's taken off somebody's plate that they're thinking about. How are they going to pay rent? Are they going to get kicked out? And these houses also have no sobriety as a requirement. Not that we are allowing, or wanting people to come in there, but we know people relapse or maybe not as committed to recovery at this time. We don't want to lose housing because somebody's struggling to reach that recovery. Next slide, please. So the expected positive outcomes. So these are the things that we expect with both of those initiatives. We're going to have a reduction in use, decreased criminal involvement. There's going to be more, hopefully, reunification with families, improvement in employment. It's improved physical and mental health status and just basic overall quality of life. So last slide, I just want to say thank you so much. And if there's any questions, I'm going to hang out and I can answer anything in the chat if there's a specific question. But thanks for letting me share as always.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. The information that individuals are sharing on here are like eye-opening and also encouraging as well. So we just thank you guys for sharing this information with us. And our next, what we're going to do right now is we're going to take we're in an hour and a half in. So we're just going to take a quick minute or two break. Everybody can get up, stand up, stretch a little bit, get your stretch on. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time because that is very important. So if you could just take 30 seconds, stand up, stretch, take an eye break, walk away from the computer, for maybe, a minute or two. I want to be able to continue as we are running just a little over time, but we want to make sure that we stay cognizant of everybody's time. Well, all right. That was a good couple minutes stretch, rest your eyes, bio break if needed. Grab a snack. And let's get rolling again. Our next speaker is from the Mass Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Service Statewide Substance Use Recovery Support Service Coordinator. Let's put our hands together and let's welcome our next speaker, Ms. Karen Larson.
The interpreters aren't sure that we haven't lost her. There we go.
I think she just needs to
There we
unmute,
go.
maybe.
Yep, we got her. Yep.
I'm having trouble with my bandwidth. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
All right, I'll just go ahead. Hi, I'm Karen, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to use my voice tonight because I think there's any other deaf people here. And using my voice is my first language, signing is what I learned later. Anyway, I just want to thank Marianne. Wow, thank you for giving us an eye that really leads really nicely into what I was planning to talk about. We've known each other over 25 years, and I think that Marianne has really shown the community what it really means to be an ally. Now, when she asked me basically, what do you need? And I tell her what I need, and she does it. I don't have to remind her, or maybe once in a while, but ask for it and she makes it happen. I'm so thrilled for that. And I think we need more of that kind of intentional community. And that's what happens for me when I see everyone here. It gives me an opportunity to represent a very small number. The deaf community is invisible. We don't see them as obvious people who have disabilities, but we need access for everything that everyone else was just talking about. We need to add for deaf people too. And we're getting there. Recently, we got support through Marianne's help and business help. We have money that we're using to develop capacity throughout the state for better services for deaf treatment and outpatient and access to what it really means to be an ally is exactly what's happening right now. Don't wait. When you see like a situation that needs to have captions or have interpreters, go ahead and do it, because that's how we build up our ability to have a community that is truly equitable and diverse. And I like what Gary Pratt said about belonging. I think that's really that sense of the heart, where the heart belongs, and that's a really wonderful feeling. Sometimes it's not always convenient. I heard about a person that, not in Massachusetts, but she had organized a huge event, plan. And then after all that work, they were not able to find interpreters for it, and they had to cancel it because they could not say, no, we can't have any deaf people here. We need to have inclusion. So that's really what I see happening here, is that feeling of yes, no matter what, would be included. So the deaf recovery coaches are really doing a lot of work in our community, and I'm really proud of that organization. It's building a lot of the gaps that were really glaring. We still have the same problems. The deaf community had people who are dying from overdose. We need more harm reduction. We need more services. We need more counselors, and we're just getting there, And I think that I want to leave you with just the idea that if we set the intention that we can make this happen together, we can't do any of this without each other. And I'm very, very grateful to have you all on my team. It's important. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much, Karen. You know, it's letting us know some of the things that we don't think about. You know, we don't think about individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing, you know, and a lot of times because of that, you know, you slip through the cracks. And thank you for bringing that perspective and sharing that information with us. And it's about being mindful. You can't talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion without including the deaf and hard of hearing. Our next speaker is part of our MOAR team. She is also part of the MOAR Parent, which is Parents in Addiction Recovery Engaging Together project, and a part of SOAR, Speaking Out for Addiction Recovery. She's actually the coordinator and collaborating to support families in recovery with others. Let's put our hands together and let's welcome Kirsten Doherty.
I'm so glad to see everybody tonight. I am really glad to be able to talk to you about the Parent Project, and I know we're all as a team still getting used to the acronym. And so the Parent Project is actually a 3-year grant that is from SAMHSA, and the whole point of the grant is to be able to support peer recovery support services and build the capacity of recovery coaches to work with individuals and families that are engaged with DCF, the Department of Children and Families, and also the justice system. So to not only support them through, you know, what is an incredibly difficult time, fear-based and oftentimes trauma-based, but it's also to help the recovery coaches navigate and understand DCF better and the justice system. So it is a MOAR project. We're very, very excited about it. It was brought to us by Worcester Parents in Recovery, which is an advocacy group, you know, making sure that the voices of the individuals and families are heard. So we're gratitude to them for, you know, bringing it to our attention. So the Parent Project has been being implemented for the last year. Part of it is providing that recovery coach training around working with individuals that are affected by DCF and the justice system, and then the implementation of recovery coach services, both individually and group. So the recovery coaches that have been trained would do the individual recovery coaching and the group piece to take what they've learned and then apply it in practice. So we're actually at that point where we are getting referrals for recovery coaching and for the groups. And so we'll be implementing that now and providing and collecting data that we can then send back to the funder about the progress we're making around that. So we're really, really excited about that. And we do have somebody that I wanted to speak to. It's somebody who is one of the recovery coaches that was selected to participate in the project, but she's in transit. So Noelle will have her come on later when she gets back, and I'll give you that heads up. I also wanted to talk about the second half of the grant, which is providing technical assistance and training to the 36 peer recovery support centers and recovery community organizations that we have in Massachusetts. And so we're really excited to bring this diversity, equity, and inclusion training to them. And it's really about, you know, being in a position where, you know, they're working, a lot of their members are DCF involved and justice involved, but providing them with the training and the capacity to support those members, especially ones that are part of the BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color. And I should note that is the focus of the grant, is to work with those populations specifically. And so there is that tie-in between those two goals. So we're really excited. We're going to embark on that this summer, doing that training, and we have a great consultant working with us. And I'm just really excited, having been involved in coordinating the SOAR network for the last, well, for over 5 years, 6 years, to be able to bring that to the RCOs now. So SOAR, as the fact, I'm not coordinating it anymore per se, but we're trying to still do what we can in terms of supporting the network. I know we have some RCOs and peer recovery support centers here, so I want to acknowledge them. We have for Holyoke, Turning Point out of Walpole, Gary with Rural Recovery, and I'm so excited to see him here because they're a fairly new recovery center, but receiving funding from another source besides SAMHSA and really taking that money and running and having created something from the ground up. So glad that Gary is with us, and also Step Rocks from Roxbury. Am I missing any other peer recovery support centers? You can take yourself off mute because I don't feel bad if I did.
All right. Yeah, this is Julie McDonald from Living in Recovery in Pittsfield. We're here also.
Great. So speaking of another center out in Pittsfield on the New York border, glad to have you here with us, Julie. And so, right. So anyhow, that's basically it. But when our recovery coach joins us shortly, I'm going to have her tell you a little bit about her experience so far with the grant. But really excited. I mean, this is a new direction for MOAR, and we're just looking forward to being able to provide a recovery orientation to this work with working with DCF. So that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for sharing. Excuse me. And also a part of an individual that's working with Kirsten is Mandy Goulet. Mandy, are you here?
Goulet. No, she's not available yet. That's why I'm going to have her speak after probably Abby.
I do apologize. I thought I saw her in the room.
Oh, yeah, she's just on hold. She's busy doing something else. But thank you, Noelle, for remembering her.
Not a problem, not a problem. Excuse me. And with that being said, we're going to introduce, go ahead and introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is the Director of Public Health Policy and Strategic Initiatives at the Association for Behavioral Health, ABH, and also Mass Coalition for Addiction Services, and also an MCAS leader. She represents 80 community-based mental health and addiction treatment providers. Let's put our hands together and let's welcome Abigail Kim.
Hi, everyone. So great to be here. Thanks so much, Marianne, for inviting me, and it's great to see some familiar faces and some of our providers. So I'm just hopping on the call today to give you all an update on some addiction treatment service funding. So I, in addition to MOAR and several other organizations, are members of MCAS, the Massachusetts Coalition on Addiction Services. We advocate for addiction services in the Bureau of Substance Addiction Service line item every year. Right now, the state budget process is ongoing. So the House budget passed their proposed FY fiscal year 23 budget, and right now it's pending before the Senate. MCAS asked for 9 different asks in the BSAS budget. The House funded 6 of the 9, and the Senate Ways and Means actually funded 8 of the 9 asks. The only ask that was not funded in the Senate was $1 million for contingency management for folks with stimulant use disorder. That is going to be filed as an amendment by Senator John Keenan, who I know spoke to you all previously. So there will need to be an advocacy push in order to encourage co-sponsorship and support of this amendment to ensure that it's adopted by the Senate and then can be put on the best footing for the final budget. Just to give a quick overview of the other asks that MCAS was advocating for. So it was $3 million for BSAS to develop and provide technical assistance to providers serving communities of color. $3 million to expand multidisciplinary team-based substance use treatment care. $1 million for contingency management for individuals with stimulant use disorder. $10 million for family supportive housing programs. $10 million for low threshold housing for homeless individuals with substance use and co-occurring disorders at risk of HIV. $7 million for a BSAS workforce development assistance program. $5 million for BSAS to provide technical assistance to addiction treatment providers with to assist in medications for addiction treatment, medication management, and serving folks with co-occurring disorders. $1 million for the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission for people in recovery, and $3 million for the Massachusetts Access to Recovery Program. So again, just to reiterate, all of those asks were funded by the Senate, except for the contingency management, which will be carried as an amendment by Senator Keenan. So I think Marianne will probably be sending out some advocacy information related to that amendment. We just have to wait for the number to be filed, which will happen tomorrow night, and then folks can start calling their senators to encourage co-sponsorship.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for that information, Abby. And this is information that we need to know, because this is things that are happening and that are making recovery happen across the state of Massachusetts, and it actually helps individuals open doors. Our next speaker is also part of the MOAR family. She is the MOAR Recovery Support Service Coordinator. And what more is happening with licensing for recovery coaching? Let's welcome our very own Kimberly Krozek to fill us out with this information.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Krozek. I'm a woman in long-term recovery, and I have been hugely blessed to work for MOAR as a recovery coach supervisor and the area supervisor for many years. I just have to get this off my chest. That song, Who's Ever, blew me away. I got it in my saved songs on my playlist. Oh my God, my heart is filled right now. So just kudos, that was amazing. So the recovery coach bill, it's in House Bill 2382 and Senate Bill S1452. In 2018, Governor Charlie Baker signed the CARES Act into legislation, building upon the opioid crisis. And under that bill, there were several commissions being held, one of them the Recovery Coach Commission. The Recovery Coach Commission then had listening sessions all over the state, and we believe that the Recovery Coach Commission responded in good faith, believing that the commission captured everything that the body heard. MOAR facilitated Recovery Coach Commission Strategy Committee that reviewed all meetings, listening sessions, and did related surveys. We still meet to review and plan on making licensing of recovery coaches a movement that protects the fidelity and enhances the growth of recovery coaches. The committee spent hours reviewing the licensure bill that was proposed. After much debate, we came up with the following requests for change that are now in the current bill. So it stands like this: a 12-member board will operate within Massachusetts Department of Public Health and include the following: the Commissioner of Public Health or designee, the Commissioner of Mental Health or designee, 6 members who are employed as a recovery coach, a recovery coach supervisor, an educator representing demographic, diversity in region, workplace, gender, identification, culture, or race. A family member of someone with substance use disorder, 1 member representing a health plan, a licensed physician or nurse specializing in addiction, a person with lived experience from substance use disorder who has received recovery coaching services. Also in that bill, it's good moral character, recent history qualifications, lived experience. Licensed recovery coaches must demonstrate at least 2 years of sustained recovery. The life experience requirement may be waived for family members or other allies who were credentialed by the Massachusetts Board of Substance Abuse Counseling certification before the establishment of the board. Grandfathering or testing exempt period. Those who already have certification as addiction recovery coach, CARC. Am I talking too fast? I'm sorry. I'll slow down. I'm a talker, speedy. I will slow down, my friend. Thank you. I knew I had to remember that, but I didn't. So the certification shall be considered as already meeting all the application requirements. Our plan is to visit and speak to RCLCs of the Recovery Coach Hub across the state to educate about the bill and listen for any other request changes. Currently, the bill is in the Joint Committee of Public Health. A hearing will be taking place and no date has been set yet. If this passes, the committee will go to the Joint Committee of Healthcare Finances and then passes from there. It will go to House floor, Senate floor, and then the governor. We want all of you involved. We want to hear your voice. Nothing about us without us. You can email me. I'll put it in the chat. And I just want to say this too. Recovery coaches are now at every intersection of the roadmap. We as a community have met every challenge put forth to obtain our initial certification, such as cost, required trainings, applications, submission management, and testing. It would be only the next natural progression to go forth with licensing to safeguard our profession. By doing so, we will have a layer of protection and an oversight of our recovery coaches, agencies, organizations, and ultimately, and most important, our recoveries by a board that oversees us. That's it. Thank you. We want to hear your voice. I'm putting my email in the chat.
Thank you so much, Kim. Just, letting everyone know the information that's going on with recovery coaching, how to get involved, what more you can do, how you can do it. And this is making an impact throughout all the recovery centers and individuals that are seeking to give back to the community, to the recovery community. So thank you so much for that information. And this is the way we get involved. This is how we get involved. I will say this, I am scheduled to have a few other speakers on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump ahead because I haven't really.
Sorry, George Kenny is with us.
George is here.
Yeah,
Excellent.
George is here. Yep.
All right. Yep. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. So with that being said, George, take it away, my friend.
Go, George.
I didn't know anyone was looking for me. This is my scheduled time, so I appreciate it. So I was here last year. It's good to be back. It's good to see so many people on and hear such great information. I just want to give a little food for thought, just a little remember when as it's good for me to stay in touch with my story. And basically, it starts at age 8. I went through some stuff at the house. There was some abuse going on. There was addicts all in the house. I grew up in like a shooting gallery right here in Four Corners in Dorchester. And everybody in the house used except for the kids, and we used to see so much stuff and people used to try to shut the door really quick so we wouldn't see what they were doing or whatever. But it was just everywhere and there was no way to hide it. And after that abuse, I went to school and I didn't know what to do, and I felt like my teacher should have known that something happened, she should have seen something different. She was the only responsible adult I knew. She should have been on it and she wasn't. And I remember I acted out and threw a chair or something like that. And the next thing you know, I'm in court and I get a probation officer. His name was Patrick King. He was a big white man. He had this big old nose that was red and he was scary. And he brought me directly downstairs and put me in a jail cell, slammed the door and walked away. And I was 8. And my mother was upstairs in the courtroom and I was like, I know she's going to be down here in a minute to get me. And she never came. It was the first time I ever seen that something could take me away from my mother, you know what I mean? And it was something happened in that moment, in retrospect, looking back, you can't experience something like that and not be affected. So what ended up happening with me, to make a long story longer, is I kept repeating that process. And so I spent the next 40 years in and out of jail cells. You know, the school to prison pipeline, I'm a textbook example of that, you know? And so I went from juvenile to state prison to county back to state and just repeated. And in the process, I started using drugs when I was 14, heavy drugs, you know. I started drinking and smoking when I was like 11. And then in 1984, crack came out. Well, freebasing came out. That's what it was back then. And it didn't have the stigmas. You was actually cool if you had some cocaine because you must have some money or something. If you so I was hanging with all the older kids, da 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 da, and no idea the grip that addiction could take on me, you know. But imagine being 14 and starting with that and not even knowing. 15, I had my first son. 16, I thought I was doing so well. I had another one. 17, I went to prison and then got out at 20, had my daughter at 21, went back to prison at 22, and just repeated that cycle, always thinking that I could do it different or do it better. And, you know, it extended way into my adult life. Like, you know, as recently as 2014, I started a nonprofit to help other people when they're getting out of prison. Me and a woman who's a social worker partnered up and started this nonprofit. And in 2015, I went back to jail. And so imagine being, you know, in the law library in jail and seeing them put up a flyer about the company you started. And I couldn't even do my own business. I couldn't even do my own program that I helped create. So that's how sick I was. So I'm really grateful today. And I know that there was some talk of ATR, and ATR was really helpful in my journey because when I got out, they dropped me off at the 112 shelter and said, good luck, you know, you're on probation, don't get high and act right. You know what I mean? And that was not enough support. And so, you know, being able to get a cell phone, being able to get a bus pass, those things were huge when I was first released because I had to get around everywhere to get things like an ID, to get some clothes, just to reconnect with people, to get out of situations. You know, sometimes it was a safety net. And if you got a bus pass, you can just hop on a train and be gone. That's way different than if you're patting your pockets trying to figure out how to move. So ATR was instrumental, and I was so grateful that they became an organization of second chances because after I had used them in 2010 when I first got out from upstate, I ended up going back and needing those resources again. And I was told before it was a one-shot deal, but they actually welcomed me back, and they had a supportive caseworker, and so it was really good. Today, I'm a grateful person in recovery. I'm a certified peer specialist. I'm working statewide to connect anybody who's doing lived experience work, from recovery coaches to community health workers. I feel like we have a powerful message and we could be even more powerful together. The criminalization of addiction has to stop, you know, and that's what they were doing with me. Nobody ever said in court, maybe he should go to a program, maybe he should get some help. It was always, you know, right back, you know. So if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, you know what I mean? And that's how the court did me. They just hit me with that hammer every chance they could. But gratefully today, like I said, no court cases, no probation, no parole, wrapped all that up, got all that off my back. Even parole and probation is a burden, and is a pressure, you know what I'm saying, out here. So when I was able to wrap that up, I felt a little lighter too, you know what I mean? So these are all first for me, you know, being able to let all that stuff go and just sort of live my life. So I'm really grateful that you all let me share my story. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're on
so
mute,
much.
Noel. Okay.
Yeah, I just realized. Thank you so much. You know, sometimes there's background noise happening and I try to mute it and I forget that I'm muted. But thank you so much, George. Thank you for sharing.
Mandy's joined us. Is it okay if I have her go, or do you want to wait until after the next speaker?
Well, I mean, let's have Mandy wrap up the SOAR project and the parent project. Go ahead, Mandy, you with
All
us?
right, let me introduce her. Yes, she is with us. So I am very excited to introduce Mandy Goulet. She is, I think, community outreach at Hope for Holyoke, but I know her as a recovery coach with the Parent Project. She's one of our inaugural recovery coaches in the project, and she's been a great, energetic, excited, passionate person about the project, and I'm just so happy to know her. So Mandy, if you just want to say a few words about your experience so far, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. Hi again, my name is Mandy Goulet. I'm going to be mindful and speak slowly. So my experience so far with the project, it has been really great. So many thus far in my recovery journey, there's so much need for support with DCF services. I myself have lived experience with DCF, and I was fortunate enough to have people in my life that were put in place, like the peer recovery centers, recovery coaches that were there to support me. And I'm ecstatic because I know that there are so many gaps, and there are so many other families that don't have the supports that I was exposed to. So I'm excited about this project and being able to be part of the solution rather than trying to figure it out and scrambling to make everything make sense. It seems like this project is just so wonderful, not only with bridging the gap with the recovery coaching, but also bringing the implementation of groups and really that wraparound service. It's just such a wonderful project, and I'm really passionate about it. As I said, I've lived experience with addiction, alcoholism, and with Department of Children and Families. So it's really exciting. The moms I'm working with, it's just so amazing for me. And I'll share the time with that.
Appreciate about Marian is her desire to just, she's got such a curious mind, and her desire to do research and to take trainings and build up her capacity to do the work. She's not a wallflower. She's just incredibly energetic and so passionate about this work. And so thank you so much, Mandy, for commenting on the project.
Awesome, fantastic. This is good work that's going on across the entire state. So this is phenomenal. So thank you, Mandy, and thank you, Kirsten, for sharing this information as well. Our next speaker, as we move forward, has been the director of the First Church Shelter in Cambridge since 1987. He is founding and steering committee member of the SIFMA, now a statewide coalition. They advocate for safe consumption services in Massachusetts. Let us put our hands together and welcome Jim Stewart.
Hey, what's going on? So I'm a person in recovery. I'm a drunk. So I've been doing harm reduction since like 1992. We hosted the first syringe exchange in Cambridge. Nobody in 02138 would agree to host a syringe exchange. So our church said, we'll do it. We did it for a couple of years. Finally, somebody else stepped up and said, okay, we can do it. I had a chance to be involved with folks who had been dislocated and displaced following the closure of Long Island and the shuttering of the programs down there. And as we sort of made connections with them, it became really clear that there was a big gap and a really deadly gap for people who are trying to deal with the substance use issue in their life. And that is, if you've got no place to use safely, if you're doing it behind a dumpster, if you're trying to do it in your car, if you're doing it on a street corner behind some of your friends, if you overdose, odds are you're not going to pull through. Maybe now that there's more Narcan available, you're going to have a better chance. But awful lot of people wind up using alone. We know that, right? And so when you're using alone, it's almost guaranteed if you OD, you're not going to pull out of it, right? Because there's no way you can, especially with fentanyl, there's no way you can get things together and revive yourself. So a lot of you have heard of them as safe injection facilities, safe consumption centers. They go by a lot of different names, but they're basically a place where people can bring substance that they've obtained elsewhere. They don't obtain them at the Safe Consumption Center, and they bring them and they administer them under supervision and a safe, clean environment. If there is an overdose, the person can be revived, pretty easily. The kind of centers that we're trying to promote through SIFMA now are places that have wraparound services. You're not just going in there to use, you're going in there to have a chance to get connected to other things as well. And there's good news associated with this. As you all know, there's Safe Consumption, 2 of them in New York, but there are over 120 of them across the globe in Canada, Mexico, all throughout Europe. They're doing important work, and it's a consistent pattern. First of all, no one's ever died in a safe consumption site. Second of all, they have marked impact on the communities that host them. They reduce the amount of drug-related crime, and they reduce the amount of drug-related detritus. You don't get all the needles and other crap lying around that you do in communities where people don't have a place to go. Down in New York City, where they have 2 of them, there's a park, and I'm blanking on the name of the park. I'm sorry, I can't remember it, but it's information that's distributed by the city in New York. They used to have about 13,000 discarded needles a month prior to the Safe Consumption site opening. That was back in the end of November of last year. And now they're down to 1,000 needles a month in the neighborhood. So that, 1,000 needles, that's not good, right? But it's, I'm not good with numbers. That's a significant decrease in the amount of drug-related detritus. The good news is also that people are 33 to 35% more likely to engage in treatment if they've been connected through a safe consumption site. And there's a bunch of different studies, but they're all consistent, no matter where it is, whether it's in Canada or Germany or wherever, they get people connected to services. So there's a bill H2088 in the House that the Mental Health Substance Use and Recovery Committee is going to report it out the end of this month. I think it's the 29th. It's going to go to the Healthcare Financing Subcommittee. It needs to be supported. I'm really grateful for everything that MOAR does. You've covered a lot of gaps over the years, but we got this big gap that needs to be covered. All this other stuff that the Baker administration and other entities have been saying, we're doing this, we're doing this. It ain't working, right? I mean, there's been a 15% increase. The Health and Human Services nationally released a report, and I'll put it in the chat, 15% increase over last year. And last year was pretty bad too. So it's just getting worse, right? And the Department of Public Health here in Massachusetts was supposed to release its numbers for drug overdoses back on May 2nd. They said, "Oh, we're not going to give them out till June." So I know they were up last year. I don't know anybody who works in this field who thinks they're not going to be up for this year. And so I know we're all concerned about doing the work we do through a lens of justice, right? And the numbers for last year, and in Massachusetts as well, there was like 45% increase in people of color, especially Black men, so there's just no other reason for people to say these things can't be part of the solution. All these other things we've been trying to do for 10 plus years, they're making a difference, but we still got thousands of people every year in Massachusetts and 100,000 plus people across the nation who are dying of overdoses. And so I'll drop it in the chat. I ask that you get in touch with your state rep. I'll also drop it in the chat how you can find your state rep, because I always forget how to get in touch with them. But I'll drop that in there with a copy of the bill. If you got some time, doesn't take much time. All you got to do is, put your zip code in it's called Where Do I Vote? And you just drop your zip code in. It gets you connected with your state rep and your state senator. Tell them, get this bill out, help save lives now. So I'll I thank you very much for your time. MOAR, you've been at the point of the spear for a long time. I hope you'll get even farther out on the spear. But start saving lives now, because we're just not getting it done. So I think I've run over. Thank you very much for your time.
Not at all. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for your energy, and thank you for your spirit. You know, it's harm reduction, harm reduction, harm reduction. And it's also saving lives. And that's what it's all about. I've been pushing the safe consumption sites in the Southeast and talking about it, and really just kind of educating the community. That's what we need to do, is we need to educate people about what it really is. So thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is the Massachusetts Public Health Analyst for Overdose Response Strategy and works for the CDC in the Foundation of Collaboration with the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. Let's put our hands together. Let's welcome Amanda Consigli.
Thanks, Noel and Marianne and MOAR for having me and allowing me to present today. Just give me 1 minute. I'm going to try to share my screen. All right. So like Noel said, my name is Amanda Consigli. I'm the public health analyst here in Massachusetts. And I'll put my email in the chat for later. But I just want to say that I am a resource for all of you guys. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the overdose response strategy, the program that I work on here in Mass. It is a public health and a public safety partnership, which is funded and supported by the CDC and the Office of National Drug Control Policy. It's currently a nationwide program, which are implemented into state teams that consist of a public health analyst, so people like me, and a drug intelligence officer. Most of the time, they're former law enforcement. And we work together to help local communities reduce drug overdoses and save lives. And we do that by promoting and sharing timely data, pertinent intelligence, and innovative strategies, especially those that intersect between public health and public safety. Because we know that there's a natural intersection with people who use substances between public health and public safety. And there's really a lot of opportunities to work together to make sure that we can implement the most effective and efficient strategies we can. So looking at the provisional data, this is from CDC and the National Vital Statistics. Looking at 12-month ending provisional data for drug overdose deaths ending in November 2021. Like Jim said just now, that in 2021, in the United States, over 107,000 people died from a drug overdose, which is about a 15% increase over 2020. And every state except Hawaii showed an increase in their total drug overdoses. Here in Mass, it was about a 10% increase. And you can see this graph shows you it broken down by substance, that top line being all opioids, and then right below it, fentanyl. Fentanyl continues to be the driving force in our fatal overdoses here in Mass and of course across the country. It's about 93% of our opioid overdoses. But also we're seeing huge increases in stimulant use and deaths. That pink line right in the middle is cocaine. It's in about 50% of our opioid-related overdoses here in Mass. And if we look at our stimulant-related deaths, 86% of them also include an opioid. So this idea of polysubstance use and our contaminated drug supply are really driving our overdoses. But however, this doesn't tell the whole story. It's missing a huge question of who's being most affected. So this is a recent study done by MassGen and some Harvard researchers looking at racial disparities in opioid overdose deaths in Massachusetts. And to orient you to the graph, this is looking at cumulative excess mortality, so the number of excess deaths per week If we look at the top dotted gray line, like here, this is that aggregate level data. So that's kind of what we've just looked at, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So if we're looking at this blue line, this is for our Black residents, and this gray line down here is for our white residents. And we can see that back in June of 2020 is when white people peaked. They had about 37 deaths per week, and then they became negative into September. But we've seen a huge increase and constant increasing among our Black residents, just to show that we need to aggregate our data, or we need to disaggregate our data so we can really get the whole picture to see who's being affected the most by our overdoses, because if we're just saying an increase, is it increase among everyone or specific populations? So there's a lot of different reasons why we might be seeing huge increases among our Black population. Some being just the intersection of the opioid crisis and COVID-19, and just the structural racism, both among our healthcare system and in our law enforcement systems. And like was said earlier, our Black non-Hispanic residents saw the greatest increase in our opioid-related deaths of 75%. And then our Hispanic males still have the highest rate of opioid overdose deaths. So it's just important to see the data and to see these huge increases among our people of color here in Mass. So looking at stimulant use, because that was about opioids. Traditionally, we've seen, this is admissions data from BSAS, among our Black and Hispanic residents. They've had the highest rates of enrollments for stimulant use, and it continues to rise. And I think this is also very, it mirrors the overdose data as well. And this is because, that being a traditional, stimulant, people who use stimulants, they're often less likely to engage with syringe service programs, oftentimes feeling, because oftentimes people who use stimulants smoke instead of inject. So thinking that syringe service programs are only for people who use opioids or who inject drugs, they're missing a huge opportunity for engagement. So they're not getting the Narcan, they're not getting the fentanyl test strips. All of these harm reduction strategies that we know work are often missing our people of color, because traditionally, if they've been using cocaine, why would I need Narcan? And we know because of the contaminated drug supply. The Massachusetts drug data stream out of Brandeis University found that about 1 in 4 samples that were sold as cocaine also contained fentanyl. So due to lower tolerance, and people not being aware that there's a potential contamination or risk of fentanyl use, I think this is what's really driving and increasing the risk of overdoses, especially among people who use stimulants and traditionally among our Black and Hispanic folks as well. So I wanted to talk really briefly about some emerging trends that we're seeing here in Massachusetts. One really being counterfeit pills. And this is another way of unintentional exposure to things like fentanyl and even methamphetamine. So we've been seeing huge increases in opioid related pills. So any kind of M30s, oxycodones, you can see on the right, the Roxys, all containing fentanyl. We've seen think Xanax pills containing designer benzodiazepines. And we're starting to see a lot more of counterfeit Adderall pills that are containing methamphetamine. The DEA put out an alert a few months ago about the increase in overdoses due to counterfeit pills. Oftentimes, what we're seeing here in Mass is either fentanyl or methamphetamine. But across the country, there's been a lot of cases of where the counterfeit pills contain both. methamphetamine and fentanyl. So just another push for harm reduction supplies and the need for fentanyl test strips and Narcan out in the community. Like the data showed, there's huge increases in methamphetamine use and stimulants. And we have some new opioids. Isotonitazine is under a class of nitazines, which are more toxic and potent than fentanyl. So we've seen a few cases in New Hampshire that were related to nitazines that resulted in a cluster of overdoses. We've seen a few cases through the MADS detection program. It's not quite as far-fetched or widely spread, but just something to keep in mind. And xylazine, which is a animal tranquilizer, often in combination with fentanyl. The xylazine, unfortunately, it's not an opioid, so Narcan doesn't work, has highly sedating effects. And I think the biggest complaint has been ulcerations of the skin. So just another thing to be aware of if you work in harm reduction or you're a treatment provider, if you're seeing crazy ulcerations in the skin, maybe it's from a xylazine exposure and unwitting xylazine exposure. 4-fluorofentanyl, just another highly potent analog of fentanyl, and then synthetic cannabinoids. So really, this is just to say our drug supply is forever changing, and you really don't know what you're going to get. So again, really a need for harm reduction and targeted harm reduction at that. So I wanted to end with health equity in overdose prevention, and this is kind of the work that I do. I think we all have an opportunity in the roles that we play to help address these root causes of inequities. We know that drug use is highly criminalized and results in mass incarcerations, which leads down to the never-ending cycle within the criminal justice system and treatment. So we need to do our best to address all of the social determinants of health and addressing the social inequities that are faced. We know that race, class, physical environment, all depending, we know there's huge differences, among race, like we've seen, any kind of economic hardship. We know there's differences in urban versus rural overdose rates, and access to housing and homelessness, and how this affects our overdose deaths. So we really have an opportunity here to look not only within ourselves, but in the programs that we work on, to look at our policies and how this might be perpetuating stigma and discrimination unintentionally. I was in Essex last week, and they were doing a sequential intercept mapping program, and they were talking about how in probation, say, if someone experiences a recurrence of drug use, they're going to be put back into jail or arrested. And how we know addiction is a recurring disease, and how do we support people through their journey without kicking them out of treatment, without kicking them out of or putting them back into jail. So there's a lot of different programs that are working to address these inequities, starting with deflection and diversion programs that divert people out of the criminal justice system and our hospitals, re-entry services that are addressing housing and all of the different social determinants of health, and just making sure that we're providing the cultural and linguistically competent services to our people, so we can do our best to support everyone's recovery journey. So I wanted to end with that and how we can include health equity lens in our overdose prevention. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Amanda. Just hearing this information, sometimes it's like staggering. And it's kind of like it takes your breath away. So it's like, whoa, it's like the battle is still there. We still have to keep fighting. And thank you for sharing that information. And we have to keep pushing for change. And change can only happen if you get involved and get your community from where you are involved as well. So with that being said, I want to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is an experienced clinician with over 20 years of experience in behavioral health administration. And she's also the Spectrum Health Chief Clinical Officer. So let us welcome Lisa Blanchard. Lisa.
Thank you so much, Noel. Now, I would say something about saving the best for last, except for the fact that I'm actually really humbled and in awe of all of the fantastic speakers and panels and really the power of recovery and lived experience that I've witnessed tonight. So I'm definitely not the best for last, but I do hope to share some information about what treatment providers can do to help support all of these initiatives and help support individuals. And so I think it follows really well after Amanda's data and some of the things that we've heard during this programming. So I am going to share a very brief PowerPoint, and I promise it will not be long. All right, does that look okay? Am I in presenter view or regular view?
You're good.
Yeah, you're good.
It looks like presenter view. I would.
Is it presenter view? I have two screens.
No,
So
it's just one screen.
It's very good, Lisa. It's good.
Okay, perfect. So again, I'm just here to talk a little bit from the treatment provider perspective and how we can lower the barriers to increase access to care, particularly in light of all of the things that we've heard tonight about how high risk it is for ongoing use in the community. And sometimes I think treatment providers aren't always as accessible as we need to be. And some of that, with much respect to our partners in recovery at the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services and our federal regulators, sometimes those things can be challenging, particularly as it relates to opiate treatment programs. So I just want to talk a little bit about kind of why would we have kind of low barrier access? Why should we make changes to how we support individuals? And this is not a surprise to anybody in this audience, right? This is what you all know really clearly, that there's so much stigma that often comes along with substance use and addiction, and the history of it really being viewed as a personal defect, a moral failing, kind of really led to a system that required the individual to prove they were ready for treatment. Right? And then it became common to insert kind of multi-step admission processes, application processes to access care, right? Lots of kind of complicated steps that you actually don't even see in other parts of healthcare. And often that's applied to medication treatment too. And I just ask folks to really think about, can you think of any other life-saving medical treatment that you have to prove some kind of worthiness, right, to begin? And so what we want to do is really change that narrative. And that's part of what we're really striving for at Spectrum. And we've talked a lot about harm reduction approaches tonight. And so I want to keep us rooted in that approach. I actually don't know where this first quote came from. Maybe it's the Harm Reduction Coalition. I'm not 100% sure. I know it's not mine, so I put it in quotes. But I really have always appreciated that. Meet people where they're at, but don't leave them there. And the second quote actually comes from our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jeff Baxter. Folks are better off with us than without us. How can we make it easier for folks to connect to us directly? And so rooted in our approach is providing immediate access to care to reduce harm. But we don't minimize or ignore the real risks. We've heard about what some of those risks are tonight. And we want to continue medication treatment as an evidence-based practice, even when there's low motivation for recovery activities or low ability to actually access those recovery activities, even if it's not related to anything to do with motivation. And we want to have a real patient-centered approach, right? Support steps towards recovery, center care around the person's own goals and not our goals, right? As treatment providers, as the so-called experts, right? But the person being the expert in their own care and not necessarily abstinence. And have supportive structure that can help individuals, but not treatment mandates. And we've talked a lot, I won't belabor the points around the impact of fentanyl, but we know really clearly that that is what we are seeing in the communities. It's pretty rare even in, our 14 opiate treatment programs across the state and in our inpatient settings for us to have an opiate positive that's not fentanyl. And it's really changed, our treatment system. We need to change with it. So we need to make sure we're providing immediate access to medication to help stabilize, because stabilization might be more difficult in the context of fentanyl because of the way that fentanyl works in the body. And methadone, as challenging as it can be to access, and that's what we need to change, might be the preferred treatment option, right? For individuals with a high risk of treatment dropout or continued fentanyl use or risk of overdose. And we need to make it more available to patients who, either don't want or have not been successful on buprenorphine, right? We need all of the tools in our toolbox, and we need to make sure we are accessible. And we might have to have, more increased levels of methadone to support, managing withdrawal from fentanyl. So really the end story is we have to make treatment easier to access, right? We can't ask people to always just come to us, right? Come to our complicated admission processes, although we do walk-in admissions at Spectrum and have for over a decade, trying to reduce that. We're still not reaching everyone. We've heard really clearly about some health disparities tonight as well. And we need to change how we provide care. So one of the ways in which we are trying to do that is to create, we have a proposed, verbally approved, just waiting on kind of the final I's dotted and T's crossed, mobile OTP to meet community needs in the city of Worcester. That's where we're going to start. We've been partnering with the city of Worcester. There's really clear data, of course, across the state and nationally about the disparities. We heard Amanda talk about that. We've heard others reference that, but we need to do something different, right? We're not reaching everyone that we need to reach. So how can we support people a little bit differently? So our goal is to have a mobile OTP to provide that access to both admission, right? Actually have a doctor suite. I think we're actually looking at an RV. So if you can picture that, driving around the communities in Worcester to do full assessments, because that is part of the requirements for both state and federal regulations, and make sure we're reaching communities of color and especially homeless populations. We've heard a bit about that crisis tonight as well, and address some of those obstacles that might be preventing people from walking in our doors, or if they've walked in our doors, staying connected to our care. And so that, of course, can be stigma, ambivalence, but also distrust, right? And us as treatment providers, but then just psychosocial issues like transportation, insurance coverage, co-occurring disorders, either psychiatric or medical. So what our mobile van's going to do is really target the most high need populations that haven't traditionally accessed us or stayed connected to us in other ways. So we're partnering, and that's part of why I wanted to talk about this tonight, right? We need to hear from individuals with lived experience. Where should we be, right? So please feel free to reach out to us. Where should we be driving this new mobile treatment opportunity to, but we're targeting places like shelters, food banks, homeless encampments, isolated neighborhoods, areas of high overdose incidence. And the goals are to really expand admission access, right? Make it easier for folks to connect to us, provide daily clinical and medical engagement so you can transition from the van to the outpatient program, or you can stay connected via the van if that's what makes the most sense for you at this time, and really be able to offer all medications for opiate use disorder and dispense methadone, provide buprenorphine, as well as naltrexone. So that's really what I was here to say. I won't take up too much time. There's my email. Heidi DiRoberto is Executive Director in the regional area in Worcester. You can certainly reach out to her as well. But that's what I'm here to share with you all tonight.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's great information. I noticed in the chat that some people talked about transportation. And some individuals even wrote, for the entire state, and the great thing is, like, certain areas were able to produce transportation by by different providers in the area, you know, but to be able to get people from, you know, a treatment facility to detox or detox, CSS, TSS to clinical appointments, these are things that are vital. You know, when you look at some of the areas where their appointments are like miles away from each other, where they stay and where the provider is, you know, this information is vital. And it's also these, to be able to provide these things are so important. You know, so to be able to get this information and try to get something set up. I know some areas have rideshare programs, some areas have the PTL or the PLT, some areas have, I know that in Brockton, Teen Challenges in Brockton, and they have a ride service now, and they provide individuals in the Brockton area for rides and transportation. So it all depends on what's going on with the community and what can be done with the providers in the area as well. So there's work to do. And with that being said, what's next? What more can you do? With that being said, I'm going to take this time to exit the stage and hand it back over to our very own Marianne Frangoulis. And Marianne, well, let's talk about it. What more can you do? What are the next steps?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our speakers. And yes, what more can we do? And since we have some people here and about 3 or 4 of our speakers, I'm wondering if there are any questions before I move on. There might be a burning desire. And if people can help me see any hands in the up, that would be great. And usually when you start a discussion, which we won't go full on because I know it's late, we do need to leave by 8 o'clock. That's when everything happens. Any questions? Do I see any? I know when I heard, I believe it was Amanda, and I believe that I also heard it spoken about before, and the issue being with incentives for treatment. And I know that when I heard, as members of the Massachusetts Coalition for Addiction Services, one of the pieces that we were advocating for was contingency management. Does anybody know what contingency management is? Abby, do you want to tell them? I think you were still there.
Sure. I mean, yeah, sorry, I'm still here. And definitely welcome other folks like providers to weigh in as well. But contingency management is a highly evidence-based intervention. It is rewards-based. So it's a behavioral intervention. So folks get rewards for behavior such as it can be like decrease in substance use, but it can also be any range of goals that folks are reaching. Since stimulant use doesn't have a FDA approved medication like opioid use, it is addressed by a range of behavioral therapies. And so contingency management is just one of those. However, since contingency management requires often money in order to implement, it is difficult for some providers and programs to really ramp up their programming to meet needs. A lot of studies show that rewards need to be in the range of $500 or more a year. However, the federal government has a cap at $75 a year for individuals. So it's really critically important to have state funding to supplement some of the federal funding restrictions. And I think as so many folks had already spoken to, like Amanda and others, we're really seeing an increase in stimulant use in Massachusetts. Both of us also just wrapped up participation in a methamphetamine use commission and came out with a report. And contingency management was one of the identified strategies for tackling increased stimulant and methamphetamine use in the Commonwealth.
Thank you for that, Abby. I just thought that it was just really remarkable as to how it came up for incentives and then, as you just said, with the methamphetamine. I got to take a speech course, forgive me. That's so important. And I feel so pleased that, our coalition is addressing that and supporting that move. So that's important. And I know a few other things that we are advocating for. And please, people, if you should put your hand up. I know Kristen has just talked about the need for transportation, and we've been talking about that for 5 years. And Mandy says, how about, a shout out to Highway to Hope, which is a wonderful thing that I believe that the voices of Hope for Holyoke were responsible for. Isn't that true, Mandy? Or Debbie, if you're still here?
I'm not sure if Miss Debbie's still here. So Highway to Hope is funded by the Healing Communities Initiative.
Yep.
Right now, where it's focused in Holyoke, that's the first wave of it. To my knowledge, Miss Debbie knows a lot more. So right now we're working with people in Holyoke, and I believe it's working to expand. We're waiting to see if we get a federal grant for it. So qualifications really briefly would be being a member of Hope for Holyoke. We can work around it. Homelessness in Holyoke, MAT, or we use MAT when we speak to people that are coming into recovery, because that's a term that they use, not medicated supported recovery, MSR. As language change and we strengthen our language, right? So there's these little tweaks that we can do within the guidelines of it, where it's based in Holyoke. But if you're a member of Hope for Holyoke, or your medicated supported recovery is in Holyoke, or your provider, your recovery services in Holyoke, we can look and see where we can provide the transportation services.
Fabulous. Yes. And Kristen's mentioning, why don't you say it out loud, Kristen, about the Wheels of Hope? What happened?
So I live in Lowell, so I'm familiar with the group behind this push for transportation access in Merrimack Valley, which is everywhere from Lowell to Newberry, Salisbury. It's actually along the river, right? So they had a priority around looking at addiction and substance use disorder, and they made this a priority, and they actually got funding through BSAS, but their funding was terminated or whatever this past December. And it's such a shame, because it was a model or a program based upon a model in Connecticut that was very successful, that they were going to take to scale statewide, but I'm not sure if they have. But it's such a shame that there's pockets, but that there's not a statewide program and funding source for it across the state. And we're an advocacy organization. We do talk about it, and we have a lot of different priorities, and we know it's a priority, but I think other people feel the same, and it's too bad. It's such a shame.
Thanks for mentioning that, Kristen. It would be good to see who's doing what, where there is the transportation. And thank you so much, Lisa, for bringing up the mobile project at Spectrum to help people bring treatment to them. That's so important. So yeah, it's something that we truthfully need to follow up. And just as we've been hearing, things to do things differently, because as we hear about the overdose rates going up, which has been forever, up and down. And also, Jim mentioning the safe consumption site, so important. And then we also heard George talk about the issues, and as we heard too from another person about the need for treatment versus prison because of probation. And I want to talk about that. If your only thing that you do against your probation is end up having an interruption in your recovery, well, then let's do something about it. And you know what, people, we can, because you will see when you look into the policy proposals that we are supporting, and in coalition, it always helps to work in coalition. There is a treatment versus prison bill, and that is listed. And if you go onto our website, www.morerecovery.org, under the events tag, pull out the town hall meeting for 2022. Don't go to 2021. You're going to see how to advocate for that as the legislative year ends in July. So that's going to be really, really important. Among other things, in hearing from people, the need for continued treatment is tremendously important. We have the contingency gives you that little bit of bite to get there, but helping people stay through it is so important. Another thing that we want to advocate for that we heard a little bit about is making sure that Section 35 is taken out of prison for men as it was for women. So if you think that's a good idea, go to our website again for that improvement. Very important. And then the licensing for addiction recovery coaches, it does have some momentum. The coaches that have worked on this worked really hard to make sure that that board is at least 2/3 recovery coaches, and they can talk to the insurance providers, they can talk to the commissioners, they can talk to healthcare providers about what their needs are as licensed recovery coaches. So important. The whole move for diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm so glad that now, even though it's overdue like 100 years, it's happening. And I want to again invite everyone to our DEI speaker series. On June 7th, you'll hear from Della Bright from the Black Alcohol and Addiction Counselor Education Program. And also, I see Leah still here. She would be very upset with me if I did not mention again, please come to the Black Alcohol and Addiction Institute this June 8th through 10th. That information is there too. And for those of you in Western Mass, I kept on hearing from Gary, what about Southern Berkshire County? So there is going to be a Western Mass Addiction Policy Forum. It is with the Hampton County Addiction Task Force, but we invite all parts of Western Massachusetts. And I know Kelly Kidd is working really hard on this. She is our Western Mass Regional Coordinator. So we want you involved. And September is Recovery Month, and we will be looking forward to doing our statewide, and hopefully the coast is clear to do something in prison. Excuse me. That came out really bad. That is outside, that is at Faneuil Hall, that has a march to it, and is really wonderful. No, we do not want it in prison. We want it outside. We want to have a march. We want to have it be statewide, and we want to help all communities across the state with whatever they are doing for Recovery Month, because September is Recovery Month. And any last words from people? And I thank all of our speakers, and we are coming close to 8 p.m.
Yeah, Marianne, this is David from Spectrum.
Yes, David.
How you doing? I just wanted to tell you, when you brought up the issue about potentially clients being reimbursed for substance use that potentially stay engaged in treatment, you might want to follow up with the group. Cambridge Health Alliance in 2021 did a pilot with a company that actually the Boston Globe did a report on recently called Dynamicare. And Dynamicare, it's an app that is used, and they continue to track clients once they get out of a substance use program, and they're given specific goals. And if they are successful in completing tasks, they earn rewards kind of on a smart debit card for up to $300. And what it does is, however, it blocks any cash withdrawals for any risky spending. But basically, there's a cash incentive for clients to stay engaged in treatment. And that was a pilot that was done by Cambridge Health Alliance with the Tufts Public Plan clients back in 2021.
Thank you for that. That's excellent. And is that with Dr. David Gasparin?
Oh, it's David Neffelsey, sorry, it's the Spectrum. Oh, it's the David Gasparin thing, yes. He's the company owner, sorry.
Yeah, that's really good information. Thank you so much.
You're
welcome. Should follow up on that. Great. Well, I want to thank everybody. You are visible, you are vocal, you are valuable, and this is how we become victorious. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to our funders, and thank you to all of you. And Yes. Come back to www.moar-recovery.org. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Okay,
Thanks for
good night,
coming.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.